Hey guys, here is part 2 of What If Bell Cranel Was Immortal. Hit like and subscribe and don't forget to check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 5, Grace 5. Another regular day. Tita what? Hestia stared confusingly at her friend, Hephaestus, who was out of her dress and in her casual/work clothes consisting of black pants that hugged her legs, boots that reached up to her knees, gloves that covered her arms, and a button-up white shirt. After Hephaestus had gone and dragged her away from the banquet of the gods last night, she took her back to her home and told her to stay the night while she checked the gauntlet she had shown her without even giving her a chance to talk back. She just left her in a room and took her leave, leaving Hestia no choice but to spend the night. She wanted to protest since Bell had specifically said he wanted the gauntlet back by last night, but because of these sudden turn of events, she was unable to return home. In short, she had broken her promise to her child. Please don't be mad at me, Bell. I had no control over this, Hestia thought to herself. Seriously, the amount of care he had for the armor was almost insane. He just got it not too long ago and he acted like he had the thing since forever. Titanite, Hephaestus repeated. This gauntlet, Hestia, is reinforced with Titanite. And just what is Titanite? Hestia asked. She noticed that her fellow goddess looked a bit tired, telling her that she didn't get much sleep last night. Had the gauntlet bothered her that much? Is it some special kind of or something? Titanite isn't just any regular ore. It's godly or, as in or that's found back in the upper world. Hestia's eyes widen in disbelief. What did you say? I didn't stutter. Titanite is what smithing deities like me and Gobniu used back when we still lived in the upper world and made weapons for other gods and goddesses. Hephaestus explained before she holds up the gauntlet she had taken from her. And this gauntlet, Hestia, has been reinforced with a great amount of Titanite. But how? How do you know it's been reinforced with Titanite? Hestia asked as the gauntlet looked like a regular piece of metal. I wasn't sure myself when I saw it last night, so I brought you here and made you stay the night while I checked this gauntlet, Hephaestus explained as she eyed the gauntlet in her hands with a look that was both critical and nostalgic. Toughness, resistance. I even tried to melt this thing, and all I managed to do was simply heat it up. You what? Hestia exclaimed loudly. Don't worry, I did little damage to this thing. Things reinforced with Titanite are hard to damage in the first place, Hephaestus said, placing the gauntlet down on her desk. I did everything I could think of to check if this thing was real or not. After staying up all night, I'm certain that Titanite was used to make this thing stronger. And seeing how this came along with an entire set, I'm guessing whoever's going around using the name of Loki's late child just gave your kid a whole set of Titanite reinforced armor. And just how much is Titanite? Hestia asked nervously. Priceless, Hephaestus said with absolute seriousness. Titanite is precious even in the upper world because of the fact that it came from another forging god whose name has been lost to time and thus there's very little of it anymore, making it ancient. This gauntlet alone is worth millions, maybe even billions. Bill Dash? Hestia was absolutely speechless. If just a gauntlet was worth that much, then Bell basically had with him more money on him than he or she knew what to do with. If she could somehow convince Bell to sell his armor, she could instantly pay back her debt to Hephaestus and still have enough to let her live the easy life for centuries to come. I don't know who managed to reinforce this with Titanite, but they clearly knew what they were doing, Hephaestus said mostly to herself as she stared admiringly at the gauntlet, impressed. Hestia was surprised as not a lot of things easily impressed her friend, especially when it came to smithing due to her high standards. Of course, those standards were lowered once she descended to the mortal world and couldn't use her arcanum, but from the looks of it, the gauntlet had passed those previous high standards. As much as I want to buy this off of you, there really isn't much I can do with it, Hephaestus said, handing the gauntlet back to Hestia, who was now hesitant to touch it due to now knowing its true value. But knowing that she had to give it back to Bell, she grabbed it and went to pull it away when Hephaestus suddenly tightened her grip on the piece of armor and stopped her. However, Hephaestus began, looking serious. I can't say the same for other gods, especially gods of war. If your kid really is going around wearing Titanite reinforced armor, then you need to keep a close eye on him. Got it? Got it. Hestia nodded and went to take the gauntlet back when Hephaestus didn't let go. She pulled and pulled, but her friend would not lessen her grip. Hephaestus? Mind letting go? Hestia pulled back, yet Hephaestus still did not release her grip. Hephaestus! As if in some sort of trance, Hephaestus blinked and Hestia used this chance to finally pull the gauntlet back, holding it close and away from her friend who was grasping air now. And was her friend pouting? Well then, I better get back to Bell now. See ya, Hephaestus, Hestia said before quickly leaving. If her usual serious friend acted like that all because of this Titanite, then she'd hate to see the other reactions of other gods and goddesses, especially those that governed war. And with Bell walking around in that armor reinforced with that, or, I need to get home quickly. She prayed to the upper world above that her child was currently in the dungeon and not walking around in broad daylight. But as the goddess left the residence of her friend, Hestia froze in her steps at what she saw was currently going on right now. Shit. Hestia didn't come home last night. Bell thought as he walked the streets with Sif by his side. It's been a day since his goddess left for some party. The banquet of gods, as she called it. She had taken his gauntlet in order to show it to a friend she knew and promised she'd be back to return it. But it seems something happened for the goddess did not return last night. I wonder if I should try looking for her? Bell thought. While he could make do without his left gauntlet just fine, he just didn't feel complete unless he had that gauntlet back on his left arm. Plus, he was worried for the short goddess. She said she was going in order to talk to a friend. But anything can happen. The more he thought about it, the more he grew concerned. But on the other hand, there were many times when he didn't see his friends for days and months back in Lordran only to see them all right in the last place he'd expect to meet them. Of course, that was before. I'll give it one more day. If she doesn't come back by then, I'll go look for her. Bell decided, pushing the issue aside for now and focused on heading towards the guild. After yesterday's quest, he was quite eager to search for a similar quest that would take him out of the city, and judging by how Sif looked, she was excited as well. Oi! Wait up, Mr. Nyatt. Attracted by the strange manner of speaking, Bell turned and saw a waitress from the hostess of fertility he was about to pass. As for the waitress in question, her cat ears and tail gave away that she was a cat person as her hair and eyes were brown. Looking left and right, Bell pointed to himself and the cat person nodded. Walking up to the waitress, Bell greeted the woman. Good morning. Is there something I can help you with? Bell thought about what this woman needed. He made sure he returned the basket Seer gave him last night so nothing came to mind. Good meowing. Sorry if I surprised you, she said before she took out a coin purse and gave it to him. Here, take this. Ha! Was Bell's brilliant response. Please bring it to that klutz girl, Naya, was all the cat girl told him, making him even more confused. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're telling me, Bell said. Anya. Suddenly, coming around the corner was that one elf Bell gave the money to the day before yesterday carrying a basket of laundry. That doesn't explain much. You're just troubling Mr. Cranel. Don't be silly, Rio, the now named Anya said, raising her head as if what she was saying was too smart for people to understand. Clearly he understands that I want him to bring Seer her wallet, which she forgot when she skipped out on her shift and went to Monsterphilia. That's what she meant? Bell thought. How was he supposed to know all thought from what little she said earlier? That's the situation, the now named Ryu said. I see. Seer, of course, did not skip out on her shift. She took a vacation day for the festival. I apologize for the confusion. No, it's okay, Bell assured the elf as he placed the purse in one of his pouches. So do you mind helping us? Ryu asked. Seer is no doubt in trouble without her wallet and we're pretty busy preparing the pub. I don't mind helping, but what is this Monsterphilia? From the sounds of it, it obviously involved monsters and was some sort of festival. You don't know about it? Ryu said, looking surprised. I thought everybody in this city knew about it. I'm still quite new to Ororio, Bell explained. Then let me teach Naya. Anya stepped in and explained. Monsterphilia is a super big festival held every year by the Ganesha Familia. They rent the entire Colosseum for a day and tame monsters captured and brought from the dungeon in front of an entire crowd. They tame monsters in front of a crowd? Bell asked. To him, that sounded like a recipe for a bloody disaster. The monsters could escape and go on a rampage, killing many lives. It's not that unusual. I mean, you got that wolf with you, Anya said, gesturing to Sif who had been minding her own business. I didn't really tame Sif here. Bell knelt down and placed a comforting hand on Sif's head. I just saved and befriended her. That's all. Well, a taming skill is a genuine skill that depends on one's natural ability, Ryu added. So basically, they're simply putting on a show for people where they tame captured monsters? Bell clarified. Exactly. It's a pretty hardcore event, Naya, Anya commented. That's Seer forgetting her wallet when she promised us to buy souvenirs. What a clumsy gal, Naya. Like you're one to talk, Ryu said to the cat girl before turning back to Bell. Anyway, we're counting on you. Seer left a while ago, so you should be able to catch up to her no problem. Got it. Leave it to me, Bell assured them before he and Sif took their leave. Taking out the coin purse, he held it down to Sif. Do you think you can track down her scent? Giving it a try, Sif sniffed the coin purse first. Then, she sniffed the air a few times before walking forward a bit. After a few more seconds of sniffing around, she called out to Bell and gestured with her head. It seems she's found the girl's scent. Smiling under his helmet, Bell put away the coin purse before following his friend. Looking down from the window of the cafe she was in, Freya smiled to herself as she drank her tea in peace. No one dared disturb or approach her, and that was due to the fact that everyone in the cafe, men and women, was captivated by her charm. Despite not having permission to use her arcanum, her charm was one thing she could not control, as the cloak she was wearing to hide did little in hiding away her charm as evident to those all around her. She wasn't bothered by it. Rather, she was amused, and it made things easier when she wanted something. Yo, sorry to keep you waiting. It seems the person she was invited by has finally arrived. Setting down her tea, Freya turned and saw Loki walking up to her, accompanied by who she believed to be the famed sword princess dressed in quite the cute dress. No, I just came a little early, Freya said before turning to the blonde swordswoman. And she is? Right, this is probably the first time you've met. This is Ace from my place. That enough of an introduction for you. Loki introduced her child in such a manner before turning to the sword princess. Ace. She may look like this, but she is a goddess, so at least greet her. Nice to meet you. The girl introduced herself with a faint blush on her cheeks, a sign that her charm had acted on its own again. Luckily, the girl was able to resist before she became completely captivated. That both pleased and impressed her. She's quite cute. I can see why you like her so much, Freya said, making small talk as Loki sat across from her. So why'd you bring her with you? Well, with the monsterphilia going on, I'm planning on going out to have some fun on my lovey-dovey date with Ace here. Loki laughed as she slapped Ace on the back playfully. Plus, if I leave her alone, she's sure to dive right back into the dungeon. If someone doesn't take care of her, she'll spend her whole life without a break. Freya watched Loki look knowingly at Ace, but she knew her earlier act was made up. She tried to hide it, but she could see it. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and she looked like she didn't get a lot of sleep last night. There were bandages covering her hands, telling her that she had hit something with her bare hands, no doubt in anger. The reason was obvious to her. Well then, why don't you tell me the reason why you called me out here? Freya asked the trickster goddess, getting right to the point. Oh come on, it's been a long time. I just wanted to have a little chat. You're lying again. Freya instantly pointed out Loki's lies. At that did a threatening aura emerge from the two goddesses, snapping everyone in the cafe out of their trance. Then I won't waste any more time and just ask. You've been making some strange movements lately, showing up at the banquet last night as well as going around gathering information. Opening her eyes, Loki stares at Freya. Is it a guy? Freya simply smiles, confirming Loki's assumption. The goddess of mischief sighs and leans back on her chair. Geez, you sex-crazed goddess. You're always like this, acting like you're in heat all the time and ready to jump on any guy you see. Oh my, how rude. I at least make distinctions. Don't try to fool me. You even flirt with male gods. Keeping them under my thumb has its perks. Geez, Loki sighs again. Let me guess, it's someone from someone else's familia, right? So what kind of guy has caught your eye this time? Spit it out. You don't want any trouble between us, right? Freya wasn't the least bit afraid of Loki's threat, but what the trickster goddess said was true. As the strongest familias here in Orario, their presence helped stifle down the crime in the city. Plus, a war between them would result in the many lost lives of her children, and she couldn't afford that. So in the end, she spoke. He isn't very strong. Compared to the children in your familia or mine, he's still unreliable. If something hurts him, he'll cry right away. That's what he's like. Freya explained as she could feel a blush coming up to her face. But he was beautiful and clear. He had a color I had never seen. That's why he stole my gaze and I fell for him. Discerning eye, that was the name of her ability. Freya had the ability to see the color and brilliance of a person's soul. For example, through her eyes, she could see that the color of Ace's soul was colored gold, a rare color. And for that person's soul, the best she could describe it was transparent, something she's never seen before. As said before, she had fallen for that person. Sounds like quite the guy, Loki commented. Yes, but something's changed. Freya's face grew serious, getting Loki's attention. What do you mean? It's his soul, it's changed, Freya said as she thought back to that day when she made the discovery. She was up in her home at Babel Tower, enjoying some wine while she looked down at the people of the city from up above. This was a hobby she did whenever she was bored. Ever since discovering that transparent color, she had been searching for it, but to no avail. Then, one day, she had found it and had then proceeded to drop her drink. The soul, it had changed. No longer was it that same captivating transparent soul. In fact, she wasn't sure if she was really looking at a soul at all, for it looked too much like a flame. A raging, chaotic flame. Freya was flabbergasted. Never before had she seen a soul like this. She should be angry. She should be enraged that the transparent soul which she had fallen in love with was gone. But no. Instead of anger, she was left captivated. Through her eyes, souls had color. But no matter how much she looked, all she saw was that flame burning deep inside that man. A huge flame that threatened to swallow anything that got near it. It left her feeling, well, she didn't really know what to feel. The flame looked chaotic, yet gentle at the same time. Such a contradiction was impossible, yet it was happening right before her eyes. She looked further. She had to know more. She needed to know more about this flame-like soul. But that's when it happened. It was on the same day she had discovered the new soul. Apparently, the man had sensed her presence. She wasn't surprised by that. Her god's mirror was what she used to view those that have caught her interest, reaching down to even the dungeon, to some extent. Of course, despite its name, it wasn't a godly item. If used for too long, the one who was being viewed could sense whoever was watching them. The fact that the man had sensed her told her she had been using the magic mirror for too long now and had to stop soon. But she couldn't. She had to know more about that flaming soul. And that's when it occurred. Flames. Flames appeared from the mirror, surprising Freya as the man's appearance started to change. He grew in size. His armor became worn and charred. The surcoat burned away, revealing armor that resembled a ribcage. The helmet seemed to blend in with his head, appearing skull-like now as a flaming crown formed from the top of the helmet. And in its hand was a flaming, coiled sword. Freya stared wide-eyed as she stared at the unknown, flaming, and ghastly figure in her mirror as a shiver went down her spine. A second later, she realized she was shaking. She, Freya, a goddess of war, was shaking in fear, but she couldn't help it. That figure in her mirror. There was something about it that made her instinctively wary of it. There was something primordial about it. Before she could think more on this, the figure actually moved. It swung its sword at her and her mirror proceeded to break into pieces, leaving Freya shell-shocked. "He's grown stronger," Freya spoke, ending the flashback as she stared out the cafe window. That unknown, dangerous figure. She didn't know what it was, but it told her enough that the man she had her eyes on was both strong and dangerous. I don't know how he did it. It was like a sudden transformation that came out of nowhere. How strong are we talking about? Loki asked, curious no doubt. Strong enough to rival my champion. Now that got a surprise from both Loki and Ace. She didn't blame them for being surprised. Her champion, Otter the King, was famous for being the only LV7 adventurer in Orario. To hear that there was someone in the city who could match him would no doubt spark interest amongst the gods if word got out. Just how did he gain such power in such little time? It doesn't make sense. Freya thought as she stared out the window. It was strange, really. When she had first discovered that soul, she had been looking out a window like this and from the corner of her eyes. Freya couldn't believe it. There he was, like some sick joke. There he is, that flaming like soul, shining brightly like a campfire in the night. He was following a wolf she immediately identified as a monster, but she ignored the creature. Instead, she turned her sights on the man that had caught her curiosity, and her eyes widened in surprise and disbelief. Titanite. She couldn't believe it. That armor he was wearing, it had been reinforced with titanite. Others may not see it, but to a goddess of war like her, she could tell. But how? Titanite was practically extinct. Various smithing gods had used up the legendary or from a bygone age. And how had she missed this when she was viewing him earlier? She sat up. She refused to just sit here while the man of her interest had just grown even more interesting. Forgive me, Loki, but something's come up. Wah dash. Oi. Before Loki could respond back, Freya was already gone. Exiting the cafe, she took the back alleys to avoid as many people as she could. With the monsterphilia going on, the streets were filled with people, meaning there was a much higher chance of her being discovered, and with her charm always acting on its own, well, she didn't need to think to know the results. Turning a corner, it seems Freya wasn't the only one taking the back alley as she ran into a familiar face. Oh my, is that you, Freya? Hestia. Indeed, the one she had run into was none other than Hestia. Are you heading to the monsterphilia too? You must be in a hurry if you're using this back alley. Sort of. I can't be seen walking in a crowd, right? Hestia nodded in understanding. It must be tough being a goddess of beauty. It has its perks. Why are you in such a hurry? Ah, right. I'm trying to find my familia child. He's still pretty new to the city, so there's no doubt in my mind he's currently out there enjoying the festivities. Hestia explained. You wouldn't have happened to have seen him, would you? He has white hair, red eyes. Though I guess you wouldn't know, would you? What do you mean? Well, lately, he's taken to wearing this full set of armor everywhere he goes. He's even got this wolf with him now that follows him everywhere he goes. So the information her familia gathered was true. Her man of interest was serving under Hestia. That complicates things. I believe I saw someone like that in the East Main Avenue, Freya said, pointing to the direction. Really? Thanks. Hestia waved goodbye before running off. Freya smiled at the running goddess before turned and headed for her destination, the Colosseum. Just how strong are you, Bell Cranel? Allow me to see the extent of your abilities. Moving away from the booth she was visiting, Seer let out a sigh. She had made the biggest blunder ever. Stupid Seer. How do you forget your wallet on the day of your day off? She thought, berating herself. After she had finished her business, she saw an accessory that had caught her eye and went to buy it, only to discover that she did not have her wallet with her. She must have left it with her work clothes back at the pub. Seer sighed to herself once again. She was usually more organized than this. She had worked hard in order to earn a day off in time for the monsterphilia, and she had promised to bring back gifts for everyone who still had to work. No other choice, I guess, Seer said, turning around and heading back in the direction of the pub. Without her wallet, all she could do was simply window shop, and that wasn't any fun when a girl was all alone. There were quite a lot of people in the streets, so she had to shove her way a few times. Seer. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out the girl's name, and Seer turned her head to see someone waving at her. Belle? Indeed, it was the armored adventurer waving at her as he made his way towards her, pushing past people quite easily until he finally made it to her. He was also accompanied by Sif, who had the bone of a chicken leg in her mouth, telling Seer that they had gotten some food earlier. I'm glad I was able to find you, Belle said before looking down at Sif and petted her. Good job, Sif. Sif let out a noise of satisfaction, and she could have sworn the wolf just smiled. What are you doing here, Belle? Seer asked, curious as to why the adventurer was here. From the looks of it, he had plans to go to the dungeon, but instead, here he is. I was looking for you, Belle said as he reached into his pouch and pulled out her coin purse. A waitress at the pub told me to give this to you, said you forgot it. You came all the way here just to give me this? Seer asked the adventurer, surprised. She was honestly touched that Belle went out of his way to find her. She could even feel a blush forming on her face. It was difficult enough moving through this crowd. I'm sure without Sif here I'd never find you, Belle said, giving the wolf another pat on the head. Seer couldn't help but smile at the way Sif's tail was wagging back and forth, so it had a soft side to it after all. Well, thank you, Belle, for going out of your way to deliver this. You didn't have to, but you did anyway, Seer said, still blushing a little before looking down at Sif. And thank you too, Sif. She reached down to pet the wolf only to quickly pull back when Sif tried to bite her. Sif. Belle looked down at his wolf friend before looking apologetic at Seer, though it was hard to tell due to the helmet. The girl could tell from his voice. Sorry, Seer. Sif still has trouble trusting others. No, it's okay. I understand. Seer wasn't the least bit offended. Sif was a monster, after all. She no doubt had little trust for those that aimed to kill her in the past. Well, now that I've successfully delivered to you your wallet, it's time, Sif, and I get back to work. Wait, he was leaving? Just like that? You're going to the dungeon on a day like this? Seer asked the armored adventurer. It was monsterphilia, for crying out loud. A once-in-a-year festival. I'm not really going to the dungeon. Sif isn't up for that yet. Belle explained, and Seer understood. Sif had recently escaped the dungeon. She doubted the wolf wanted to go back so soon. Instead, we're heading to the guild to see if they got any quests that can take us outside the city. He's leaving the city? On monsterphilia? At first Seer was touched, now she was worried. Didn't this man know the meaning of taking a break? Belle, be honest with me. You're still new to Orario, right? The knight nodded. So that means you've never experienced something like monsterphilia before, right? The knight nodded again. From what he told her during his last visit to the pub that one night, he was from the countryside, having lived most of his life with his grandfather until he passed away and came to the city to become an adventurer. It's a common story Seer has heard plenty of times before. There were a few harvest festivals back in my village, but they weren't as grandiose as all of this, Belle said, waving around to the packed streets. To be honest, they really weren't anything special. Okay. Then, tell me. Seer began slowly as she stared at the helm of the adventurer, looking at the slit of where Belle's eyes would be looking through. How he was able to see through such a small slit was a question Seer would have to ask another time. Belle, when was the last time you've taken a break? Even though she couldn't see his face, Seer imagined the adventurer had blinked at her. Taken a break? You know, like relaxing, having fun, things like that, Seer said and awaited the knight's answer. The fact that she had to explain all this to Belle was already making her worried. Oh gods, it was just as she feared. Come here. Not giving the knight a chance, Seer took his hand and dragged him away, forcing Sif to quickly follow the two. Wait, what? Seer, what are you doing? Helping you relax. Seer spoke in a tone that left no room for argument. I know you're an adventurer, Belle, But life isn't all about fighting monsters. Even adventurers have to take a break once in a while. What Seer said seemed to have an effect on Bell, as there was a noticeable shift in the man. Seer didn't know what it was, but she kept going nonetheless. Also, you're planning on going outside the city on a day like this? Not on my watch, mister. But Seer. No buts. Seer stopped the knight from going any further. You are taking a day off from being an adventurer and are going to accompany me for the rest of the day. Think of this as my thanks for delivering my wallet to me. Seer looks at Bell for quite a while before he finally relents and sighs. Okay. Lead the way. Seer smiles and does just that, gesturing Sif to quickly follow them. Seer wraps her arms around Bell's right and proceeds to drag him around to different booths. The main event was the Colosseum, but that could wait for a while. First, she had to make sure to show Bell a good time, and that's when she realized. Wait, isn't this basically a date? Unknown to Seer, someone had been watching what she had been doing with Bell. It was Hestia. After hours of searching, she had finally found her blessed child, only to see him get dragged away by a girl she's never seen before. And from the way the girl clung to his arm, they weren't strangers. A girl. In the time she was gone, Bell had gone and gotten himself a girl. She had been replaced. Bell? You traitor. With tears in her eyes and forgetting just why she had been looking for her child in the first place, Hestia took off running, getting a few weird stares from the people around her. While Seer was ignorant to the crying goddess, Bell was not, and neither was Sif, as they both had noticed the goddess. What's wrong with her? Both Bell and Sif thought. Is something wrong? Seer asked, noticing that Bell was looking behind them. It's nothing. I'll take care of it later, Bell assured the girl. Confused a little, Seer shrugged and took Bell to a nearby booth selling crepes. She wondered if Sif could eat one. Just how had he gotten into this situation? These were Bell's current thoughts as Seer dragged him around the festival, showing him around while also making sure to buy gifts for her fellow co-workers. Bell didn't know why he allowed Seer to drag him around like this. He was stronger than her, he knew that. He could pull away any time he wanted and continue on with his original plans for today. So why? I know you're an adventurer, Bell, but life isn't all about fighting monsters. As Seer's words echo in his head, Bell sighs, knowing what the answer was. Am I that tired of fighting? Bell thought to himself. For years, or perhaps centuries, he's been fighting ever since he became an undead. He had to fight his way to freedom in order to escape the Undead Asylum. He had to fight his way through Lordran in order to ring the bells of awakening. He had to fight literal gods and demons in order to link the first flame. At the end of it all, just what did he gain? Fame? Recognition? He never fought for those things. He fought to bring an end to the undead curse, to release those who were branded by the sign. But in the end, what was he left with? Bitterness. Loss. He didn't even know what he had done had any positive effects on the world. He had been following the whims of ancient serpents who he couldn't even trust. So to answer his own question, yes, he was tired of fighting. Perhaps Seer is right. Maybe I do need this. Bell thought to himself as he bit into some treat called a crepe. He didn't know what this was, but just by looking at all the ingredients, he could tell that the treat would have tasted very sweet if he still had his taste buds. He had brought this earlier with Seer at her request, and she even tried to pay for it, but he quickly stepped in before she even had a chance to pull out her wallet. He still couldn't taste anything, but Seer didn't know that. She didn't need to know that all the food she gave him for breakfast was all given to Sif instead. Though judging from how the wolf looked when he did feed her the first time, it told Bell that perhaps his lack of taste was a small blessing in disguise. So in front of Seer, he lied about the food being delicious and when she wasn't looking, discreetly fed portions to Sif. Of course, he made sure not to feed the wolf anything she didn't like and also made sure she didn't overeat. So anything Sif couldn't eat, he just ate them himself. See? Isn't this nice? Seer suddenly asked him, holding her own crepe in her hands. I guess. Was he having fun? Bell honestly wasn't so sure. All they had really done was buy crepes as Seer dragged him around to different booths. Was this what having fun was like before he became an undead? He honestly couldn't remember. Probably sensing that he still wasn't enjoying himself, Seer looked around until her eyes settled on the Colosseum and pointed over towards it. Then why don't we head to the Colosseum to check out the taming show? Aren't you the least bit curious as to how they tame monsters from the dungeon? I am more worried than curious, Bell said, looking towards the Colosseum as he, Seer, and Sif made their way to the structure. They brought monsters here all the way from the dungeon in front of thousands of people. If you ask me, that's just asking for a disaster waiting to happen. You worry too much, Seer said. The Ganesha Familia have been doing this long before you came to live here. I've even seen a few shows myself in the past, so it's fine. But the risk is still there. Bell insisted as the three arrived at the entrance of the Colosseum, where Bell spotted a familiar face. Miss Ina. HM? Bell? Indeed, it was his half-elf dungeon advisor. With her was a short, human female with pink hair. How is one born with pink hair? Is that even natural? Bell didn't answer back to the voice in his head, though it made a good point. Thinking about it now, he had seen a lot of different hair colors and styles when he walked around the city. It was quite weird, though he wasn't one to judge since his hair was naturally white. "What are you doing here?" Bell asked. The half-elf was clearly in her work clothes, yet she wasn't at the guild right now. "I'm here to help manage the crowd traffic," Aina said. While the whole monsterphilia was planned and managed by the Ganesha Familia, the guild sponsors the event and monitors it. "I see." Bell nods in understanding. "So why are you here, Bell?" "Here to see the taming show," Aina asked the undead. "Sort of," Bell said, gesturing with his head to Seer, silently telling Aina the real reason he was here. "A friend of yours?" Aina asks, having never met Seer before. "Yes, I think." Bell found himself unsure. Were he and Seer friends? He's only known the girl for a few days, yet their interactions were anything but distant. In fact, he quite enjoyed their little talks. "How rude. You don't think of me as a friend," Seer said, looking hurtful. No. It's just that we've only known each other for a few days, so I was just unsure," Bell explained before asking, "So, are we friends?" "I'd like to think we are," Seer said before remembering that they weren't alone and turned to Aina. "Right, how rude of me. My name's Seerflova. Sorry if we forgot you there for a moment." "No, it's fine." Aina waved it off before introducing herself. "I'm Aina Tool, from the guild administration and Bell's dungeon advisor." "Dungeon advisor, eh?" Seer hummed to herself, looking at Aina from top to bottom before sending Bell a teasing smile. "Well, aren't you lucky, Bell? You've got such a beautiful woman looking after you. I guess." Seer's teasing seems to fly right over Bell's head as he looks at Aina. He'll admit, the half-elf was beautiful, having that mature air and beauty to her, but he didn't see a reason to point this out. He had met a lot of beautiful women during his time as an undead. Such faces that came to mind include Dusk of Owalasile and Crossbreed Priscilla. "You guess." Seer sent him a disbelieving look before looking towards Aina. "Do you have to deal with this every day?" "As of late," Aina said, silently telling the girl that Bell wasn't always like this. Suddenly, a group of adventurers ran by, looking to be in a hurry. From the badges Bell could spot on their armor, they were from the Ganesha Familia. "They were in a hurry," Bell comments while narrowing his eyes under his helmet. His instincts were telling him that something was wrong and they were usually right. And as if to prove them right, the girl Aina had been talking to walked up to her and whispered something in her ear. Whatever was said caused the half-elf to gasp. "What? Is something the matter?" Seer asked, having noticed the half-elf's worried look. No, just some trouble at the west gates. The adventurers that passed by us just went to check it out," Aina explained before muttering quietly. "Though, what's at the west gate?" Bell suddenly asks, catching his advisor by surprise. "Huh? Well, Aina." Bell decided to drop the miss part he usually used when talking with Aina in order to convey his serious tone. "The west gate is where the Ganesha Familia keep the monsters they captured for the show." Aina finally relented and explained, unable to bear Bell's gaze. "I see," Bell said as bells were already going off in his head. "Here." He gave his crepe to Seer before pushing down the portion of his helmet that covered his mouth. "I'll go check out the west gates." "What?" Seer said in disbelief. Bell probably guessed she was mad that he was suddenly leaving her when she promised to show him a good time. "I don't think you should do that, Bell," Aina said, a worried look still on her face. "I have a bad feeling about this." "So do I, and that's why I'm going," Bell said before turning to Seer. "Sorry to run like this, Seer." "You should be. You're leaving a girl all by her lonesome to go play hero," Seer said, sounding a bit bitter. "I'll stop by the pub tonight," Bell said, offering that as an apology. Seer hummed to herself, thinking about it, before opening her mouth to speak. "Kaya." Whatever words Seer said were drowned out by a chorus of screams, followed by a howl of roaring. People turned to the origin, as did he, and saw what had caused the screams. Panic spread like a ripple effect as the people around Bell began to scream and run for their lives, and Bell doesn't blame them for that. Orcs, battle boars, imps, an infant dragon, a bear monster known as a bugbear, a tiger monster known as a Lydrafang, a large monkey known as a silverback. Basically all monster from the middle floors were rampaging around the festival grounds, destroying booths and sending people flying like ragdolls. "Monsters? Why are they dash?" Aina cries out in surprise when suddenly, one of the monsters got close to them, an imp, and attacked Aina. The half-elf cries out, but, rip. The sound of fleshing being torn off was heard as blood was splattered all over Aina, who fell on her butt. Looking up, her savior had been one other than Sif, having used her fangs to bite and tear off the head of the imp clean off. This action caught the attention of all the monsters as they all turned their attention over to them. Seer, Ina, I need you two to run, Bell said, walking forward as Sif soon joined his side, throwing aside the imp head which soon turned to smoke. But what about you? Seer asks as she helps Ina up. The crepes that used to be in her hands had long since been discarded in the chaos. I'll be fine, Bell said, drawing the claymore sword on his back and held it up. Now go. I'll take care of this. Wait, Bell. These monsters are from the middle floor. You can't handle these dash. Ina began but was interrupted by Bell who raised his voice. I said run. His voice seemed to kick up wind, surprising both Seer and Ina who jumped at the volume of his voice. Lowering his voice, Bell then said, Sif and I can handle this, but I can't protect you two if there's this many of them. So for my sake, I need you two to get away from this place. Now go. Leaving no room for argument, the girls nodded before doing as the armored adventurer said. But just before leaving, Seer turns around and says, You better show up at the pub tonight. From under his helmet, Bell smirks and says, I will. Satisfied with that, Seer goes with Ina as the two ran, leaving Bell and Sif to face the monsters. Bell was glad the two had run, but now he faced another problem. There are too many people here. Not everyone had quickly left the area as there were still people here who had either fallen when making their escape or were too hurt to run. I need to lead them away. Going for his belt, Bell grabs and throws a throwing knife he had bought yesterday, nailing a silverback right in the eye. It roared in pain as its right eye bled and became useless before it, and the other monsters glared at him. Now, with all the monsters' attention on him, he quickly ran in a random direction. Sif, this way, calling out to his friend. The wolf quickly follows after her master while the monsters chased the duo. Something isn't right. The voice in his head spoke up. What do you mean? Bell responded back as he and Sif ran through the back alleyways. Don't those monsters seem a bit too focused on you? Raising an eyebrow, Bell looks behind him to see all the monsters chasing after him. Only that there were more than before as he counted a few trolls and sword stags joining the ever-growing pack. Looking closely, he could see a sort of crazed look on their face as they chased after him with reckless abandon. They're after me, Bell deduced. Long before he drew their attention, their sight was on him. It seems someone is aiming for our lives. Nothing new. But did we make any enemies while we were here? I don't believe so. Bell thought back to anyone he could have angered, but no one came to mind. He pretty much minded his own business ever since he came back. Still, this was good. If they were after him, then they won't target any civilians. He just needed to find a place where he could fight without having to worry about civilians. Despite the numbers, Bell was confident he and Sif could take care of all of them. Ah! Turning a corner, Bell ran into someone, stumbling back as the person who bumped into him fell down and landed on their butt. Recovering his footing, Bell looked to see who he ran into while also thinking what they were doing here in the back alleyways. Hestia! Bell? Indeed, it was none other than his goddess, Hestia. There were tears in the corner of her eyes, evidence that she had been crying, and there was something wrapped in cloth in her arms. Hestia, what are you doing here? Hestia stuttered around, wiping the tears from her eyes before she turns the question around. What are you doing here? Before Bell had a chance to answer, there was a crash behind him. Turning around, it was that silverback from before still looked pretty pissed. It roared and Bell was quick to act, grabbing Hestia and throwing her over his shoulder as he and Sif took off running again, dodging a chain that was connected to one of the shackles around its arm. Wah! What's going on? Hestia, confused, grabbed onto Bell before crying out in surprise at the sight of the monsters chasing after them. Monsters! And so many of them. Bell, what did you do? Bell didn't answer back, not because he couldn't answer, but because he was too focused on finding a safe place to fight. Having Hestia here was an inconvenience, but it was just one person. Even with his track record, protecting one person should be easy considering he wasn't alone. He had Sif. With the two of them, he was still confident that he could pull this off. Turning another corner, Bell came to a stop, forcing Sif to stop as well and look up at him in confusion. Why had Bell stopped running? The reason was the streets he was now in brought memories of his previous self into his head, telling him what district he was now in. Deadless Street, one of the many districts here in Orario. A wide residential area for the poor class located in between Orario's east and southeast main streets. From the memories he's recovered, it was designed by an eccentric man known as Deadless, thus the name, and is complex due to the multiple planning done to it. It is even rumored that one will never find their way out once they enter, and is often called the other dungeon. The memories that Bell recovered told him of his experience here. He had gotten lost when he first arrived here in Orario, and it was only a miracle that he managed to get out of the complex maze. Damn it! I was trying to get away from people. From behind, the horde of monsters had finally caught up, forcing Bell to make a decision. But beggars can't be choosers. With that in mind, Bell took off again, followed by Sif. As he ran, Bell saw from the corners of his eyes people closing their windows and staying inside, having seen the monsters after him. Good. As long as they stay inside, little harm should come to them. Now, to find a place where he could swing his sword around. Here. Skidding to a stop, Bell ends up at an open area with enough room to even swing a great sword around. He guessed this place to be the heart of the district. There was multiple drawn arrow leading to different exits, no doubt made by the residents here, and up above were clotheslines with pieces of clothes hung up to dry in the sun. Hestia, I need you to hide, Bell said, setting down Hestia before handing the claymore sword in his hand to Sif. Sif and I will take care of the monsters. Are you crazy? There are too many. You can't take them all on. Hestia argued, and she made a good point. In the past, in Lordran, Bell had a lot of trouble dealing with multiple opponents, often dying due to being ganged up on. Stupid skeletons, Bell commented in his mind. But that was the old him, back when he was still coming to terms with his undead status. Don't worry. Drawing his sword, he and Sif stood in front of Hestia as the horde of monsters finally caught up to them. It's not the first time I've dealt with bigger numbers. And with those words, both Bell and Sif shot off like bullets. Hestia couldn't believe the recklessness of her child. She had been by her lonesome, crying her sorrow out after what she saw earlier. Like, who was that girl anyway, and why was she so close to her Bell? There was no doubt in her mind that they were on a date which wasn't fair. Not even she's had the chance to go on a date with her Bell. So completely forgetting about returning the gauntlet her child lent her and warning him about how priceless his armor was, she stuck to the alleyways to cry her eyes out when Bell had suddenly shown up and scooped her off her feet. A knight sweeping a girl off her feet. It was a textbook fantasy except one. She was being carried around like a sack of potatoes instead of like a princess. And two, there were a bunch of monsters chasing after them. What the hell had her child even do to attract so many monsters to him? Not only that, when they entered the infamous Deadless Street, her child had boldly proclaimed that he could take care of all the monsters. She didn't believe him. Why should she? Despite what his stats said, a part of her still couldn't believe her child had gained such power on such short notice. Not to mention all the monsters chasing after them looked incredibly strong, looking to be in a league her child wouldn't be able to handle. And she would be right, if it was the old Bell. BGM. Thunderbolt Fantasy OST. Thunder BO Elt Fantasy. / With one swing of his sword, Bell took the head of a troll. Spinning around, he swung his sword and sliced two imps in two. From behind him, a battle boar was charging towards him, but Bell simply turned and kicked the monster back, actually sending it flying back where it crashed into Elijah Fang. Holding up his shield, he stopped a fist from an orc before slicing it in two just like the imps. From the air, a sword stag was charging towards him, but Bell simply reached up, grabbed one of its pincers, and slammed the monster down on its back before stabbing his sword into where its magic stone was located at, killing it instantly. Removing his sword and holding it in a reverse grip, he spun around and threw his sword at another troll, hitting its head and killing it instantly. Seeing the armored man without his weapon, the monster grew bold and went to charge in to swarm him, only to forget that he wasn't alone. / Like a whirlwind, Sif came in and sliced the monsters that tried to attack her master. The boar and Lygerfan from before were sliced into pieces, an orc was cut straight in half, the head of an infant dragon came off, and a bugbear was missing its arms before its head was then sliced off. It was a whirlwind of blood and death, and the cause was Sif, holding the claymore sword in its mouth and glared down the other monsters, daring them to approach. A lizard man and a mad beetle stepped forth, attacking with claws and fangs. Sif held her ground, ready to defend her master only to then jump up, allowing the monsters to pass. The two monsters looked confused, until they felt the heat. Whoosh! A short burst of flame caught the monsters by surprise. Before they knew it, they were burnt to a crisp, dead, and unrecognizable. Such was the strength of great combustion. With the same hand that summoned flames, Bell conjured a whip of fire, known simply as Fire Whip. Using it, Bell ran forward, sweeping through foes as he went and retrieved his sword he had thrown earlier before joining up with Sif and facing the remaining monsters. What had once been many were now only a few. There were only 15 monsters left, including that silverback, and they all looked hesitant in attacking. Bell was fine with this as he once again summoned flames to his left hand. The flame in his hand grew larger until it was slightly bigger than his head before he proceeded to throw it at the remaining monsters. The great fireball struck true, striking a sword stag which died instantly along with those around it, for the fireball exploded, catching others in its area of effect, while others that weren't so close to the sword stag suffered severe burns, crying out in extreme pain as their skin melted off of them. The people that were hiding in their homes and watching had to turn their eyes away from the flash the fireball created when it struck the monsters. It also came as a surprise to those living on higher ground when they could feel the heat of the flames from where they were at despite being a distant away. Such was the strength of Bell's pyromancy when augmented by the Lord of Cinder's skill. It had not only powered up the flames, but it had also widened its AoE, taking down more than half of the monsters. Seeing the remaining monsters in pain, Bell and Sif didn't fail to capitalize on the opportunity as they both rushed in. With a swing of their swords, the two proceeded to make mincemeat out of the monsters until all that was left was the silverback, who was now staring at the two in fear. In an act of desperation, the silverback used one of the chains attached to its wrists and flung it at them like a whip. As if not even trying, Bell raised his shield and deflected the chain whip away from him before reaching out and grabbing it. He then proceeded to use his sword and stab it through one of the openings and into the ground, preventing the monster from running. Without a word, Bell pointed forward and Sif knew what he wanted. With speed matching a first-class adventurer, Sif immediately covered the distance and used her sword to slice the silverback in two. The monster couldn't even let out one last cry as its body exploded into black smoke, leaving behind only its magic stone, which Sif, dropping her sword, proceeded to eat. As the smoke from the defeated monsters cleared, the only ones left standing were both Bell and Sif, both picking up their swords before standing triumphantly. The people hiding within their homes couldn't help but be in awe as the rays of the sun shined down on Bell's armor, as if seemingly declaring his victory and ordering others to praise him. And praise him they did. Cries and cheers erupted from the people, shouting out their amazement, surprising Bell and Sif, who both jumped in surprise at the cheers of the people around them. As for Hestia, she couldn't help but look on, eyes widen with both awe and disbelief. Too strong, she thought. The way he swung his sword and fought, the fire he had conjured, it was all too much. And to further her disbelief and awe, the entire battle had taken only 2 minutes. Too much. It was all too much. A part of her was amazed at the power her child displayed, a bit proud even, but it was still too much. That strength, that magic, those flames, was that the pyromancy she had read about? First class. Her child really was a first-class adventurer now. Titanite reinforced armor worth billions. Strength and magic that was unheard of. Hestia couldn't take it anymore. And so, she fainted in order to save her mind from overloading. BGM end. / With one swing of her sword, Ace easily defeated the monster before her. The sword in her hand wasn't the same sword she had been given to by Gobniu, as that had broken. That god was going to kill her when she had faced a mysterious plant-like monster earlier. It was a bit difficult as the sword wasn't the same as her desperate, but thanks to her friend, Lafia, she and her friends had managed to pull through. After that strange meeting with Goddess Freya, she and Loki had been walking around, going on a love-dovey date, though she ignored that part and focused on trying to enjoy the festivities. That was until they had gotten news that the monsters the Ganesha Familia had captured had escaped and were now rampaging around. Quickly, she went into action, killing monsters along the way until she saw her friends fighting those strange plants, and here we are. The sword she was wielding was something Loki had found somewhere. It was a simple straight sword, but it'll have to do until the crisis was over. Was that the last one on this street? Ace asked a guild worker who nervously nodded, probably dumbstruck at how fast she struck down the monster. Already? That's lame. Her goddess, Loki, commented. It feels like someone was toying with us. Ace agreed with her goddess. From what she saw when going around exterminating the escaped monsters, they caused very little damage. In fact, it was like they were searching for something. So, was that the rest of them? Loki asked the guild worker. And no, he said, still a bit shook but calmed himself down enough to speak properly. I heard word that there was a horde of monsters at the Eastern Street. Really? Then we better get over there quickly. Come on, Ace. Loki gestured for Ace to follow, and she did. It didn't take them long to reach the Eastern Main Street. When they got there was a lot of commotion, but no one was panicking like she had expected. It's quite noisy over here, Loki pointed as she looked around. Is it already over? Ace wondered the same thing as Loki approached an old woman for information. Excuse me, young lady, where are all the monsters? I heard there was a big horde of them here. Oh, well, you see, I heard a young man already took care of the monsters. Eh? All of them? By himself? No, the old woman said. The people from the Deadless district brought the news. Said he had a wolf with him that aided him against the monsters while protecting this girl. They said he finished the monsters off in a matter of minutes. Huh? A wolf? Loki raised an eyebrow in confusion. Ace, on the other hand, had a feeling as to who this young man is. You don't know? It was an adventurer lad covered in full body armor. He was like a knight, really? It is him, Ace thought. To hear that he took care of a horde of monsters without any trouble came to no surprise to her. What she was curious about, though, was how he fought. "Whoa!" came the cries of people. Turning around, Ace was forced to quickly move out of the lest she gets run over by a familiar-looking wolf. It was Sif, running and making a path as following close behind her was Bell, carrying Hestia in his arms. "Oh, that was him. The lad in the armor," the old woman pointed out as Ace followed Bell using her eyes. Despite all the armor he was wearing, he still moved pretty fast. And there wasn't a single scratch on him, telling her that none of the monsters hadn't even managed to touch him. Though, for some reason, she smelled smoke and ash when he passed by. Clack. Ace blinked, feeling something touching her foot. Looking down, she saw something wrapped in cloth at her feet. Kneeling down to pick it up, she unwrapped the cloth to see a familiar-looking gauntlet. "Isn't this?" Speaking out loud, Ace got up and looked up to see that Bell and Sif were already long gone. No doubt, the gauntlet was a part of Bell's armor. She'll have to find some time and return it to him. Of course, the only problem is she doesn't know how to meet him. And so, the ruckus that took place at Monsterphilia calmed down. The rapid response of many familiars and the guild helped to minimize damage. The culprit who released the monsters in the first place still hasn't been caught, and no clues as to their identity were found. With the culprit's intention unclear, the case was closed. Hostess of Fertility. Leaning against a wall while Sif simply curled up on the ground and took a nap next to him, Bell waited for news until Seer, back in her work uniform, came back from the room that Hestia was currently resting in. "How is she?" Bell asked, pushing himself off the wall. "She's fine. It looks like she fell unconscious due to stress or something. A good night's sleep is all she'll need." Bell sighs in relief. "That's good. I was worried when she suddenly fainted like that." "To see you so worried like that when you came around greatly surprised me," Seer said as she giggled. "It was kind of refreshing to see you like that. For as little as I've known you, you barely react to anything. I was starting to wonder if you even had emotions." "Well, I'll have you know there are things even I'm afraid of," Bell said, crossing his arms as Seer giggled again and smiled at him. "I'm glad you're all right, though. When I saw all those monsters chasing after you, I was really worried." "I'm sorry to have made you worried," Bell said before spreading his arms out. "But as you can see, not a single scratch on me. There isn't a lot that can scratch this armor. I made sure of that," Bell said with a hint of pride. He had poured a lot of Titanite into making this armor as defensive as it could go. Next to the Artorias set, the Elite Knight armor was a favorite of his, not only because it was the armor of the man who helped him escape the Undead Asylum, but also because of the memories he had with this. He had worn this through most of his journey in Lordran until his adventures through Asylum. "You've caused quite the uproar, you know?" Seer said. "People are talking about the brave knight and his wolf companion. In fact, after Miss Ina left me to see if there was anyone she could help, I went to try and find you and I saw you fight." From under his helmet, Bell raised an eyebrow. "You did?" "Yes, the way you and Sif fought was amazing. I could barely keep up with you. And especially when you, Bell, started throwing fire around. It was just like the many stories adventurers tell me. You were truly amazing." "You flatter me, Seer. I didn't do anything that amazing." Bell was quick to downplay himself. "No, really, you were amazing. In fact." Suddenly, Seer got really close to Bell and whispered to where his ears would be under his helmet. "I fell in love with you when I saw you face all those monsters." Bell's eyes widen in surprise before he turns to look at Seer smiling at him. She was teasing him. "Well, I best get back to work," Seer said, pulling away and heading downstairs. Before heading down, she turned back to him and said, "Remember, you still have to make it up to me for leaving me all alone. You promised." And with that, she headed downstairs to work. Scratching the back of his neck, Bell only had one thing to say. "What a strange girl." Sif let out a cry that told Bell she agreed with him. Kneeling down to his canine companion, he placed a hand on her head and rubbed it gently. "You did great as well, Sif. Thanks for having my back." A faint smile can be seen on Sif as she wagged her tail in happiness. Bell let out a small laugh at this before going through his head, reviewing his day. He had plans to go to the guild for a quest only to get sent on a delivery quest by one of the waitresses here. After he found Seer, he went to go back only to get dragged along in the name of him taking a break and having fun. Soon after that did monsters escape and attacked, forcing him to fight them to minimize casualties. In short, he had plans, they got derailed, and he had to fight multiple monsters at once. Yep, sounds like another regular day for Bell, the chosen undead. Sigh, why can't things ever go his way for once? Chapter 6. Grace 6. Jolly cooperation? Supporters. They are people who explore the dungeon along with adventurers. What set them apart from adventurers was clear in the name itself. They support adventurers, carrying many things on them ranging from magic stones dropped from monsters to spare weapons and items. New familia members can serve as supporters to older familia members to gain experience in the dungeon. In some cases, members of a familia may serve as supporters to the more experienced members. In short, supporters were just people who helped lighten the load of adventurers so they could focus more on fighting monsters. It was a job many did not like one bit. Despite their role, no one really had any respect for supporters these days. Because it was their job to carry items and equipment for other adventurers, they were seen as nothing more than pack mules, people who weren't strong enough to be proper adventurers. In short, a lot of adventurers looked down on supporters, and thus it was a position no one wanted to fill in. This was especially true for one Lilaruka Arde, a supporter belonging to the Soma Familia. Today was not a good day for her. But then again, since when has her life as a supporter ever been good? With chestnut-colored hair and eyes and reaching just past 100 centimeters, she was slightly smaller than the average Palum. Her petite and small figure made it almost hard to believe she was of age 15. Why me? Was the thought that ran through the head of the running Palum. Why was she running, you ask? Well, young Lily had decided to terminate her contract with her lastest adventurer. He was rude, crude, foul-mouthed, disrespectful. Basically what most adventurers were like. She made it her point to not stick around these kinds of people for long. The results? Get back here, you little shit. He didn't take it very well, though she did try to secretly take more money than what was given to her only to get found out, so yeah, there's that. With an enraged adventurer hot on her tail, she took to the back alleyways. Having lived in Ororio for all her life, she knew these alleyways like the back of her hand. But to her misfortune, it seems the enraged adventurer knew these alleyways just as well as she did. Add in the fact that his build was more on the agile side, and Lily knew she wasn't going to give him the slip anytime soon. Her only hope was to make it out to the open streets and lose him in a crowd. But as the setting sun signaled that the day was almost over, she doubted there was going to be many people out right now. Quite nice of those villagers to lend us all this food. Perhaps now we can have more than potato crow dash. Lily didn't even have a chance to slow down or move out of the way. Someone had appeared from around the corner, and when she ran into them, she fell down holding her face. It felt like she had run into a wall of steel. Ow! She groaned out, holding her nose and checking to see if it was bleeding. Thankfully, it wasn't. Ah, forgive me. I didn't see you there. Looking up, Lily saw who she had run into and stared in surprise. She also figured out why it felt like she ran into a steel wall. The person she had run into was wearing full body armor. He even had a helmet which hid what he looked like from her, though judging from the design, she guessed the person underneath was a human. The armor he wore was quite impressive looking, if not a little grimy. A straight sword and multiple pouches hung around his waist, and on his back he carried a claymore sword. In his hands was a bag filled with food. Another thing that surprised the Palum was that he wasn't alone. By his side was a wolf bigger than her, and from the way it glared at her, she was suddenly concerned for her safety from it than the adventurer chasing her. Are you okay? The armored man, whose voice informed Lily that he was quite young, offered her a hand to help her stand up. She never got a chance to take it. Finally caught you, you little bitch. The adventurer that had been chasing her finally caught up. Damn Palum, just stay right there. In his rage, he didn't register the armored man's presence until he came forward and stood in front of Lily, surprising both the adventurer and the Palum. She took note of the claymore sword that was seemingly floating on his back instead of being in a proper scabbard. As for the bag of food, it was now being held by the wolf. Huh? Who the fuck are you? Tin head. No one of concern, the man said in an almost dispassionate tone. To Lily, it made him sound tired for some reason. Then move it. You're in my way, the adventurer demanded, but the armored man did not move. Oi, are you deaf? I said move. I will not. What? Getting angrier by the minute, the adventurer reached for the sword hanging from his back. The wolf that stood to the side of Lily suddenly growled, baring its teeth and scaring Lily a little as she backed away a little. The wolf calmed down when the armored man gestured for the canine to stand down. Who the hell are you? You a friend of that fucking bitch? Never seen her before. The man's reply was instant. Then why are you protecting that little shit? It is obvious you mean to do harm towards her. As a warrior of sunlight, I cannot allow this. Warrior of sunlight? What kind of cheesy title was that? Don't even get Lily started in how cliché this moment was right now. In her time of need, a knight in not-so-shining armor had appeared to aid her. It was like something straight out of a storybook. What the fuck are you saying? Not understanding the armored man, the adventurer's anger had reached its peak and he drew out his sword. Fuck it. I'll just kill you and the girl. With anger powering him, he swung his sword with both hands, aiming right for the man's head. Pow! It happened in an instant. Lily only blinked for a second and the scene in front of her had changed. The armored man's hands were up while the adventurer was on the ground, his sword clattering beside him. Aya! Holy shit! Lily thought to herself as she got a good look at the adventurer. He was holding his mouth for his jaw was completely dislocated. Looking back to the armored man in front of her, one of his hands was balled into a fist, telling her that he had punched the adventurer and was the cause of his dislocated jaw. Tum! Suddenly, a death-gripping pressure befell over Lily and the adventurer, making them both turn to the source, the armored man. She wasn't sure if it was Lily's imagination, but she saw a red, glowing eye from under the slit of the helmet. Leave, or forfeit your life. Due to how close she was, the pressure around the man was so intense. Lily considered it a miracle she didn't wet herself right then and there. Never before was she scared for her life until now. Letting out jumbled-up words due to his mouth, the adventurer grabbed his sword and took off running. Once he was gone, the pressure from the armored man disappeared like smoke. Letting out a sigh, the armored man turned to Lily and asked, "Are you okay?" Lily could only nod dumbly as the man offered her a hand and she took it, being helped up to her feet. That was quite the spectacle. That was quite the spectacle. Making her presence known, Ryu stepped into the alleyway, carrying in her arms a bag of groceries. "You are from the hostess of fertility." The armored man known as Bell Cranel turned to her, tilting his armored head a little. "Ryu, correct?" "Right." She never did properly introduce herself to the armored adventurer. "Ryu Lion." The elf's introduction was short and to the point. She bowed a little before looking straight at the man covered in grimy steel. Did he not bother to properly clean his armor? The faint smell of blood and dirt was evident on him, but it wasn't unbearable as it didn't bother her sense of smell too much. "Bell Cranel." The knight introduced himself before gesturing to his wolf companion. "I'm sure you've already met Sif here." "Yes," Ryu simply said, having seen it last week during Monsterphilia. She'll admit that she was quite alarmed to see the knight being accompanied by what was obviously a monster. From what Seer has told her, the wolf was quite the fighter. Said wolf made her way over to Bell's side, bag hanging from her mouth as she spared the elf a glance and only that. "Running errands, are you?" Bell asked, gesturing to the bag in the elf's arms while also taking his own bag from the wolf. "Yes, I was on my way back to the pub when I saw what happened. You handled that situation quite well, though dislocating that man's jaw was a bit much," Ryu said, though she wasn't one to talk. Had she been in the same situation, well, let's just say she always ends up crossing the line. "Yeah, it seems I underestimated my own strength." Bell laughed awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "I simply used the same strength I did against that werewolf that one night, but I guess the gap in levels was more severe than I thought." That werewolf that one night, he was obviously talking about Loki Familia's Fenrir, Bet Loga. To be honest, the fact that the knight didn't even remember the werewolf's name was kind of amusing to the elf. "So what are you doing here, if I may ask?" Ryu asked, having only seen the adventurer from before attack Bell only to get countered. From the way Bell was helping the Palum from before, she deduced that the knight was protecting the girl from the adventurer. Had it not been for Bell projecting his superior strength, the adventurer might have continued trying to fight. "Well, Sif and I just got back from a quest when we ran into this girl," Bell explained, turning to the Palum girl only to see that said girl was no longer there. It seems during their conversation, the Palum had up and left. "Quite the slippery one, that girl." "Huh. Guess she must have left while we were talking," Bell said, coming to the same conclusion she did before turning back to her. "Well, we best be on our way. You have work, and Sif and I must be returning home." "You're not stopping by the pub?" Ryu asked. Since last week, the knight had not been around the pub as often besides to pick up breakfast in the morning. Her friend Seer tried to hide it, but the girl was clearly upset about this. She even waits every night in hopes of the knight appearing. Personally, though, Ryu felt that this was a good thing. Despite her talking to the knight normally and what he did during Monsterphilia told the elf that the knight could be trusted to an extent, Ryu still thought of the armored man as dangerous. While she trusted the knight enough to know that he wouldn't purposely hurt Seer, the elf still thought it was best if her friend didn't associate herself with the man often. These thoughts were shared with Mamma Mia and the other workers. Not to mention, Ryu glanced down at Sif. While she hasn't talked with the armored adventurer often, she would see him from time to time when she was running errands, and each time she saw him, he was accompanied by his wolf companion. It was obvious to see that the wolf went with Bell to wherever he went, which meant that if he ever did come by to the pub again, the wolf would follow and would thus raise a ruckus just like it did last week during the incident at Monsterphilia. Of course, the monster and her armored master were already making quite the stir due to the fact that the pair that was Bell and Sif, an adventurer and a monster, was something no one has ever seen before. "Unfortunately, no," the knight answered her, holding up the bag in his hands. "As you can see, I already have tonight's dinner, so there is no reason for me to visit the pub." "I see," said the elf, slightly glad about this. However, The saddened face of Seer flashed in her head, and against her better judgment, Ryu spoke up. If you have the time, do try and stop by. Seer won't admit it, but she is quite saddened by your lack of presence. Is she now? Despite the helmet, Ryu could imagine Bell raising an eyebrow at her. Yes, she sometimes mumbles something about chasing you away because of something she said. Ryu would sometimes hear Seer mutter to herself, saying something along the lines of, I said too much, and I scared him away. I believe it would please her greatly if you stopped by. The knight crosses his arms and hums to himself, contemplating on what to do before he looks back up at Ryu. Perhaps I could stop by tomorrow night so long as nothing comes up. I'll be sure to let Seer know, Ryu said, bowing before taking her leave. The knight did the same before the 2-3 counting Sif went their separate ways. As she walked through the alleyways to get back to the pub faster, Ryu thought about her talk with the armored adventurer. Despite her feelings, she had gone and said all that. Was it an effort in order to cheer her friend up? That was the only logical explanation she could think of. Exiting the alleyway and coming upon the place she called home, Ryu looked down at her hand, remembering that small incident of Bell handing her the money for the repairs. She still could not believe such a dangerous man was able to touch her. It simply made no sense. Unique-looking armor, a strange personality, a monster companion, no matter how one looked at it, the one known as Bell Cranel was a strange individual. The next day. You're going back into the dungeon? Ina looked at the knight who, much to her and her fellow co-workers' relief, came into the guild without kicking the door through. He was close to doing it again. He reined himself in. Making his way over to her, he simply said to her, I'm heading back into the dungeon. Yes. Bell nodded to his half-elf advisor. Looking down at Sif, he then explained. I talked it over with Sif. We've been doing quests for a good week now and have been outside Orario for a good while, helping merchants and villages. So I've heard, Ina said, thinking back to the past week. As the knight had just explained, he and Sif have been taking quests that always took them outside Orario. For the most part, it was simple escort missions such as helping merchants or even travelers get from one place to another safely. He then started to take quests from villagers, asking for someone to exterminate monsters that were threatening them. For this, Ina was quite reluctant to let Bell handle this, even with Sif by his side, but he reassured her and came back a day later, showing his results. Since then, he's taken a few more similar requests and came back safely. The villages he aided all said very nice things about him. Ina thought to herself, receiving reports from the villages that confirmed Bell's success in his quests. The contents were all quite positive about him, though she was a bit worried when she read that Bell almost caused a forest fire nearby. Nevertheless, the half-elf smiled at how much good Bell was doing, even if these mundane and small achievements went unnoticed as they happened outside the city. I very much like doing quests, Sif as well, and I don't plan on stopping, but it's becoming clear that it's more beneficial dungeon diving than it is doing the quests I'm doing now. Yes, that is true, Ina said. The quests Bell had all done up until now had all been fairly simple and easy, which is why the half-elf allowed her charge to do them. But because they were simple and easy, the pay and rewards he received from them were no doubt mediocre when compared to dungeon diving. So, I talked it out with Sif, and it seems she's finally fine with going back into the dungeon. Bell finished explaining. You're not planning on releasing her, are you? Ina, as much as she doubted Bell doing what she just said, asked anyway. Afraid as she was at first, she had gotten used to Sif's presence around Bell. Even if the wolf tried to bite anyone that tried to so much as pet her, she will never admit it out loud, but she found it cute how the wolf followed Bell around as it did since the day Bell brought her up from the dungeon. What? No, never. Sif is my friend. I would never leave her in a place that tried to kill her before. Bell vocally expressed his denial at Ina's question, and the half-elf wasn't sure if she was seeing things, but she thought an emotion flashed through Sif's eyes, one of happiness at Bell's words. Okay. Calm down, I'm just joking. Ina laughed a little as she motioned for the knight to calm down. It seems she underestimated just how attached Bell had gotten to Sif. Anyway, I came by just to tell you that. Sif and I should be back around the afternoon. Bell informed his advisor before he and Sif turned to leave. We'll be off now. Ah, wait a minute, Bell. Ina called out for the knight to stop, and he did along with Sif as they both turned to the half-elf. Yes. Just how far are you planning on going in the dungeon? She never had the chance to call him out on this, but she was greatly displeased that her charge ventured down as deep as the 10th floor, a place rookie adventurers like Bell had little chance of surviving there without either the right stats or support. Well, I met Sif down at the 10th floor, so probably there, Bell answered nonchalantly, causing Ina to sigh. This guy. If you're worried about me, then don't worry. I've already made the necessary preparations, Bell said, patting his pouches. He still had that grappling hook he bought a week ago. The small signs of dirt and scratches told the half-elf he had been using it, though the rope looked new. He had bought a new aid kit and some potions from the guild a few days ago and they had yet to be used. A few smoke bombs rested in their own pouches, and resting by the knife he used to cut out magic stones were a few throwing knives. Add in the straight sword strapped to his side and the round iron shield wrapped tightly around his left arm, and he was set. The claymore on his back was simply him carrying it for Sif through. He would use it himself sometimes if he felt like it. Seeing all this, Ina was unable to say anything back to the armored adventurer. No matter how she looked at it, the knight was well equipped and prepared for anything. Still, Ina thought to herself, eyeing the multiple pouches Bell had around his waist. Don't you think you're carrying too much? Ina said, pointing to Bell's pouches. You think so? Bell looked down at his belt of pouches before looking up and shrugging, not seeing the problem. You're well prepared, I will admit that, but won't those just weigh you down in a fight? Ina pointed out. It's no problem for me, to me these are as light as feathers, Bell said, hopping a few times to prove his point. The fact he was able to do that while still wearing armor reinforced his point. Still, I think it would be better to have a supporter help carry those for you. A supporter? Bell tilted his head with Sif mimicking the act. Cute, Ina thought before shaking her head. Focus girl, focus. As the name implies, supporters are people who aren't strong enough to be proper adventurers, so they support other adventurers by lightening their load and so on, allowing adventurers to focus more on fighting monsters. I see, was all Bell said with a small nod. Since you're the only member of your familia right now, a supporter would be ideal to have when exploring the dungeon. As your advisor, I'd like you to have someone in your party that isn't a monster, Ina said before quickly looking towards Sif. No offense, Sif. The wolf's response was to growl at Ina, making the half-elf edge away from her desk a little. While she found Sif cute at times, she had to constantly remind herself that Sif was still a dangerous monster. Its origins were still unknown, which added to the worries Ina had with Bell keeping the wolf around. These worries lessened after a week, but they were still there. Bell hummed to himself, thinking about what Ina had said to him before looking up to the half-elf. I think I'm good. Having Sif with me is more than enough, and these pouches, he patted said pouches to emphasize them, are bigger than they appear to be. If you say so, but think about it more. Okay? Ina asked and the knight nodded. Well then, we're off. Turning around, both Bell and Sif took their leave from the guild, ready to finally head back into the dungeon after so long. Ina watched the boy and his wolf companion leave the building and sighed to herself. Ever since the Minotaur encounter, Bell had changed somewhat. He was more reserved than he used to be, as his usual bubbly attitude Ina had seen from the day he became an adventurer was no longer there. He now wore armor he had gotten from who knows where, wearing it so much that she was slowly starting to forget what he looked like under that helmet, and he was a lot more cautious than he used to be, to the point of being paranoid. Of course, she didn't see all this as a bad thing. If anything, it was good. He was more careful and safe, which pleased her. Even if he did venture down to floors she didn't want him being at, he paid a lot more attention during their lessons where she would teach Bell, and recently Sif, more about the dungeon and monsters that laid within. He even started carrying around a book around where he would fill it with information about the monsters he encountered so far. He called it a monster book. Not only that, he always makes sure to do proper preparations before heading out. While the armor he wore was still unknown to her, it protected Bell quite well. All in all, there was little she could complain about. But I should at least find a supporter that could work with him, Ina thought to herself, but decided to do that later. Right now, she had work to do, and Bell wasn't the only adventurer under her care. There it is, Sif, the entrance to the dungeon. Bell spoke to his canine friend next to him, keeping a close eye on Sif, who eyed the entrance and stairs that would lead them down into the dungeon. After Bell had left the guild with Sif, the wolf had been silent as they made their way closer and closer to Babel Tower. Of course, Sif was usually always quiet, keeping to herself most of the time, but she was quieter than normal and Bell knew why. Kneeling down, Bell placed an arm around Sif, making the wolf turn to him. I know we talked about this earlier, but I want to make sure if you're really okay with this, Bell asked. Sure, he needed the money for Hestia, but he also didn't want to make Sif uncomfortable and burden her. Over the course of the week, the two had grown close to one another to the point that they were inseparable. Bell had to wonder if the original Sif and Artorias had the same kind of relationship as they do, probably considering after the knight's passing. The great grey wolf guarded his grave against bandits and grave robbers that would defile the knight's tomb. And then he came along. There I go again, brooding, Bell thought as he shook away the feelings welling up inside of him. It seems Sif had sensed his earlier brooding as the wolf began to rub her head against his helmet. The undead couldn't help but laugh as he pushed the wolf back and stared right at Sif's face. I need the money for Hestia, but I don't want to force you into this. We can go back to the guild and take a quest if you want. Sif said nothing, but Bell could tell from her eyes that she was contemplating the choices given to her. But in the end, she gestured with her head towards the dungeon, saying that she was okay. Okay then, I just wanted to make sure, Bell said, getting up and turned to head towards the stairs that would lead down into the dungeon when he sensed someone approaching him from behind. He tensed up and slowly reached for his sword. Mister, you in the armor. A young, feminine voice called out to him and Bell turned around, coming face to face with, a backpack? Ahem, down here. Looking down as told, Bell came face to face with that same Palom girl from yesterday, garbed in a slightly torn red and white hooded top, a red skirt, black tights, and light brown boots. Of course, said clothes were hidden by the coat she wore. The backpack he had seen earlier was being carried by the small girl, surprising Bell a little as the big was bigger than her. Heck, now that he got a good look at her, she was smaller than even Hestia, a good 1 foot as the Palom's head barely reached his chest. Hello, Mr. Adventurer. This may be sudden, but would you be in need of a supporter? A supporter? Bell tilted his helmeted head at the girl, thinking back to his earlier conversation with Ina. Does this sudden offer confuse you, sir? But it's actually quite simple, the Palom girl said before explaining. A poor supporter who wants to pick through the leftovers of an adventurer is advertising herself. No, that's not it, Bell said. Are you not that Palom girl from yesterday? Yesterday? Have you seen Lily before? Lily doesn't remember it, the small girl said, apparently named Lily. Why is she speaking in the third person? Was what Bell thought out of all things to point out. What do you think of having a supporter? The girl asks, bringing back the question she had previously asked. Oh, that's okay, I don't need one. Eh? The girl exclaimed in surprise at Bell's instant response. But like he had told Ina earlier, he was fine without having a supporter for now. If it's about luggage, then I'm fine carrying what I have on me. Bell pats one of his pouches, for example. And you're from a different familia, aren't you? I'm sure you'd rather be with one of them than a complete stranger. But Lily can't. Suddenly, Lily hangs her head down a little, her expression turning gloomy. You can't teammate up with your fellow familia members? Bell asks, raising an eyebrow from under his helmet. The girl simply nods her head. Why? Lily prefers if we talk somewhere else, Lily said as they were blocking the road with them just standing there. And so, the three of them walked over to a nearby fountain and sat down at a bench while Sif Simple sat down on the ground next to Bell. Allow me to first introduce herself. Lily's name is Lilaruka Arde, from the Soma familia. It's a very famous familia. I'm Bell Cranel. Bell introduced himself before gesturing to Sif next to him. And this here is Sif, my friend. Sif, for her part, simply spared a glance at the girl before turning back to the fountain, finding more interest in it than the girl. That's quite the big wolf. Lily has never seen someone like Sif before, Lily said. Where did Mr. Bell find him? She. Huh. Sif is a female. Really? Lily looked back at Sif in disbelief only to receive a glare from the wolf, making the small girl hide behind Bell, who laughed a little. Don't worry, you're not the first to mistake Sif's gender and I doubt you'll be the last, Bell said before sighing a little. Was he going to have to do this every time people got Sif's gender wrong? Bell personally didn't think Sif looked that masculine. As for where I found Sif, it was in the dungeon. The dungeon? Lily blinks a few times as she looks over at Sif. A moment later, she exclaims out loud, Wait, is Sif a dash? Yes. Bell quickly covered Lily's mouth before she blurted out what Sif is. He waited for a good minute for the Palom to calm down before he removed his hand from her mouth. She looks at Sif with newfound, but sensible caution before focusing back on Bell in an attempt to ignore the fact that there was a monster. Anyway, back to our earlier topic. Why is it that you can't party with your own familia? Well, Lily is small and weak, as you can see. She gestures to her tiny body for emphasis. So they don't let a klutz like her in. She's shunned within her familia? Bell thought, finding that both surprising and depressing. Lily feels uneasy at home, so she moves from one inn to another, Lily explained. But she's run low on money. So please. Suddenly, she latches onto Bell and shakes him a little as she speaks with teary eyes. Please, please. Lily wants to go the dungeon with you, sir. Lily doesn't want to sleep on the streets tonight. Okay. Calm down, Bell said, pushing the girl off of him. I understand your situation, but can I check one thing? Sure, what is it? Are you sure you aren't that Palom girl I ran into yesterday afternoon? Bell asked. While it was a brief encounter, he doubted the girl would have forgotten about him. As much as he wanted to prevent drawing attention to himself, bumping into someone in armor was surely something not easily forgettable. I think Mr. Bell has Lily confused with someone else, Lily said as she reached up and pulled down her hood, revealing a pair of dog ears. Lily is a Chianthrope, not a Palom. For more proof, Lily lifted up her coat and showed off a tail, reinforcing the fact that she was a Chianthrope. Ha! Bell found himself surprised, and after his experience in Lordran, it took a lot to surprise, even if by a little. That can't be. Still doubtful, Bell went and grabbed one of Lily's animal ears without thinking, catching the girl by surprise as he rubbed his fingers against the animal ear. It was real and not an illusion. These are indeed real, but this doesn't make any sense. The appearance is uncanny and the height's the same. Something wasn't right. A feeling came over Bell. The same kind of feeling he got whenever he talked to a certain bald bastard. I'm Trusty Patches, the one and only. Yes, he was getting that very same feeling whenever he talked to Patches, that damned hyena. Mr. Bell. Ah! So lost in thought, Bell had forgotten about what he was currently doing, and that was rubbing Lily's ears. By now, the girl was a blushing mess. Quickly, he took his hand back. Forgive me. I got lost in thought. Touching Lily's precious ears as you please. Take responsibility for it. I am truly sorry. Bell apologized. But as Lily was putting back on her hood, he sent Sif a look through his helmet. Keep a close eye on her, was the message, and from the nod Sif gave him, she got the message. Anyway, what do you say, sir? Do you want to hire Lily? It would please me greatly if you did. Crossing his arms, Bell hummed to himself. As he had said before, he didn't really need a supporter right now, but there may come a time where he might need one. Perhaps if he brought Lily along, he could see why Ina suggested a supporter to him. Despite the feeling he got from the girl that reminded him of Patches, he sensed some truth in some of her words. I guess it wouldn't hurt to have one, Bell finally said before turning to Sif. What do you think, Sif? Looking up at her master, the wolf simply gave him a shrug, leaving the final decision up to him as she didn't care that much. Well, okay then, Bell said, turning back to the girl. But do I need to pay you some sort of compensation? We're having a trial run today, so we can just share the profits from the dungeon. Lily will be very happy if she gets just 30%. 30%, huh? Bell said, thinking about it more before finally coming to a decision. Okay then, you can be my supporter for today. Thank you, sir, Lily said, leaping up in joy as she grabbed her oversized backpack and slung it on quite easily. Then let us go, Master Bell. Master. Bell raised an eyebrow at that, noticing the girl switching from Mr. to Master. He decided to ignore it for now and got up. Yes, to the dungeon. Double-checking to make sure his equipment was secure. He, Sif, and now Lily made their way to the dungeon as a memory from long ago played in Bell's head. There's no telling how much longer your world and mine will remain in contact. But use this to summon one another as spirits, cross the gaps between the worlds, and engage in jolly cooperation. Cooperation. Glancing at Lily walking next to him, Bell thinks to himself, I wonder if this counts as jolly cooperation? Here she is, back in the dungeon. After a week of being up at the surface, she was back here in this hellhole. Yes, she was born here, that was an undeniable fact, but she was born different from regular monsters here. Plus, she had more bad memories here than good ones. Despite her displeasure, Sif sucked it up. This was for her master, she reminded herself. While she didn't know much about the surface, that didn't mean she didn't learn anything during the week she spent on the surface world. She learned that not only can meat be made better by cooking it, but there were also different types of food she could enjoy, such as that spaghetti she ate at that one place with that seer girl. Her master said it was called a pub. She also learned that if one wanted something, they needed something known as money called valis in order to trade it for the item they wanted. Such examples were her master buying the sword and shield weeks ago, as well as his throwing knives and potions. She also learned that her master and that goddess/banshee of his were poor. She didn't exactly know what that meant, but she had a pretty good idea after living with the two for a week. Honestly, she didn't know why her master didn't just take what he wanted. She knew her master was very strong, so there was very little chance of him being stopped by anyone. But he didn't, for he was kind like that. And despite his situation, he made sure she didn't go hungry by giving her most of his food while barely leaving anything for himself. After a week of doing this, Sif expected her master to be dead tired, but instead he was still fine. She was starting to wonder if her master even needed to eat to survive. Master Bell. Oh right, in her musing, Sif had forgotten about the small girl now accompanying them. A palum is what her race is, and a supporter is what she was called. Apparently, from what the half-elf had said, they were supposed to support adventurers like her master, but she doubted such a small girl could be of any use to Bell. She was curious as to what was in that oversized bag she was somehow carrying. Perhaps she was stronger than she looked? Maybe that's why her master told her to keep an eye on the girl? Master Bell? You've been quiet for a while now? The one known as Lily pointed out as she followed her master through the dungeon. In direct contrast to how her master was on the surface, the second he entered the dungeon, his whole demeanor changed. Sword drawn, body tensed up, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings for enemies, and completely closing his mouth, going completely silent. Sif had seen this side of her master a number of times during their quests. Apparently, he always got like this whenever there was danger in front of or around him. It was like that thing, what was it called again? Oh right, a switch. It was like a switch had been flipped inside of Bell. Whenever he got like this, Sif couldn't help but think that he wasn't much different than the monsters down here. And judging from the nervousness on the Palum girl's face, she must have felt the same. Master Bell? Hello? Can you hear Lily? Sif wanted to say to the girl that it was useless talking to her master like this. It was next to impossible to get a response from him. But talking was a hassle, so she kept to herself, not like she could talk anyways in her current form. The Palum girl sighs, probably giving up and getting a response from her master only to perk up when they arrived at their destination. The 10th floor. Indeed, it was the floor where Sif had first met Bell at. Have you been down here before? Her master suddenly asks the Palum, catching her off guard due to having not spoken since coming down here. Huh? Yes. Lily has partnered with different adventurers before and has been down to at least the 11th floor. The Palum explains. I see. Has Master Bell been down here before? Just once. I met Sif when I first came down here. Her master explains, making the Palum glance over to her. A simple glare made the girl quickly turn away. Oink oink. Sif's ears pick up a familiar disgusting cry. She barks, getting her master and the girl's attention before gesturing with her head at two incoming orcs, both armed with clubs. Lilaruka, step back. Her master told the Palum girl, and she did just that, keeping a good distance away from them as Sif stood by her master's side, who gripped the claymore sword in his hand, intending on using it instead of giving it to her like he usually did. He must want her to train more with her fangs and claws. She was fine with that. As much as she's grown fond of using a sword, she shouldn't get so used to it that she forgets how to use her natural weapons. Let's go, Sif. Baring her teeth, Sif goes on ahead of her master, roaring as she shoots forward like an arrow fired from a bow. Her teeth found the head of one orc, and she proceeded to tear the head right off the shoulders of the monster, spine included. Such a bloody sight would have made that were not used to seeing such a thing sick to their stomach. Sif was not one of those people as she threw away the head in her mouth, spitting out blood. Orcs were disgusting, in both smell and taste, but Sif had tasted worse when she had been making her way to the surface. It wasn't something she couldn't handle, but she was reminded why she liked using a sword more. Now as for the second orc, it had already been dealt with by her master, using the claymore sword to slice the monster in half from the top to the bottom. Despite the condition it had been in when Bell had met Sif carrying it, whatever metal was used to make the sword was durable, and the blade had been sharpened with the whetstone Bell had bought long ago. Screech. Her ears picked up a familiar screech which her master and the Palum girl heard as well. Turning, she saw a small group of imps and bats heading their way with another orc acting as leader. Master Bell! The Palum cried out in alert, but her master was already acting. Going for his belt of throwing knives, he grabbed two and threw them, his arm snapping like a whip. One knife found itself in the head of an imp, killing it. The second knife lodged itself in one of the orc's eyes, causing it to scream in pain as it fell to its knees. With the leader down, for now, Sif sped forward, closing the distance as she used the orc as leverage, using its body to climb up and jump towards the battle beasts in the air. With her claws, she tore through two bats. With her fangs, she bit through a third bat, devouring its magic stones in the process. From within herself, she could feel the magic stone making her stronger, but it was by a huge margin. Rather, the increase was quite weak. She didn't know why this happened every time she ate a magic stone from monsters, but if it made her stronger, she didn't complain. It was how she was as strong as she is now. Flipping over, Sif landed gracefully on the ground, spitting out the remnants of the bat she had just bitten. The remaining bats, a low number of 2, set their sights on the wolf. The imps, numbering a decent 5, also turned to Sif and were soon joined by the orc, who finally got the knife out of its eye and directed its rage to the closest thing to it. Here she was once again surrounded by monsters. Last time, she had been wounded and tired as she had previously fought a whole plethora of monsters while making her way up to the surface. Unlike then, she was fully rested and wasn't suffering from any wounds, but she did not have a sword on her. But that was fine, for just like back then, help soon arrived. Frush! 2 fireballs struck the bats in the air, turning them as well as their magic stones to ashes. A second later, a sword erupted from the gut of the orc before the monster was bisected into 2, the bloody remains flying to reveal her master. Holding the claymore sword with both hands, Bell jumped forward and flipped over towards the imps before coming down with a powerful somersault smash, catching a few imps with his sword. Whether they were sliced or crushed, Sif did not know, nor did she care for in the same instant. Her master sent her a look through the slit of his helmet that told her one simple thing. Duck. Swoosh slice. Doing as told, Sif ducked down just in time as, with one hand, her master spun around like a hurricane and caught the rest of the imps around them, the sword slicing through flesh, bone, and blood. By the end of it, the only monster left standing was herself. Master B dash. Before the one known as Lily could finish her warning, her master swung his shield arm out and struck an imp who had jumped out from up top of those tree-like clubs planted in the ground, hiding in the mist, and tried to surprise attack him. The edges of the shield had been whetted down and sharpened, making it as sharp as a blade as the sharpened edge sliced into the imp's head, striking through the skull and reaching the brain. The imp died before it knew what hit it, making its surprise attack end in failure and leaving both Sif and her master unharmed. Master Bell, you and Miss Sif were amazing, the Palum girl cheered, jogging over to them while her master shook the imp corpse off of his shield. Her master made no attempt to boast as Lily's compliment seemed to fly over his head. Instead, he placed the claymore sword back on his back and grabbed the knife he used to remove magic stones from monster corpses. Ah, allow Lily to do that. Stepping forward, the Palum girl pulled out a knife and insisted she extracts the magic stones. If Lily isn't even allowed to do this, then there's not much point in being a supporter. Her master looked like he wanted to retort, probably thinking amongst the lines of, I can do it myself, but decided to hang back and watch as Lily quickly and expertly removed the magic stone from the monster. A hum was heard from underneath her master's helmet before he went over to another monster, the orc, and proceeded to extract its magic stone while Lily focused on another. Seeing as there was nothing she could really do, Sif decided to keep watch in case of any more monsters coming. Luckily, her master and the supporter got all the magic stones removed. Geez, I told you that Lily could handle extracting the magic stones, the Palum said as she stored the stones she extracted into her bag while Bell did the same, placing them into one of his pouches. I'm not very fond of people doing things for me that I can easily do myself, is what her master tells the small girl. Still, you are quite good at gathering magic stones. I'm hardly as impressive as you imply. This is all Lily is good for, Lily said. Master Bell should leave gathering magic stones to me and should focus more on fighting the monsters. This way you'll save more time and earn more money. I guess, her master said, seeing the girl's logic. But can you not call me Master Bell? Just Bell is fine. The Palum shakes her head. Master Bell can call Lily whatever he likes, but Lily will keep an air of professionalism. After all, Lily is just a mere supporter while Master Bell is the adventurer. Her master made a noise of confusion, telling both her and the Palum that he was confused. Sif was the same but still made sure to keep an eye on their surroundings. Do you not get it, Master Bell? The support in supporter brings to the mind an image of an indispensable resource, but the job is, in fact, more similar to porters. In the eyes of honorable adventurers who risk their lives to fight monsters and earn fame, we supporters are only parasites trying to suck them dry of their achievements while doing nothing. We supporters would be deemed arrogant if we asked for recognition equal to that of adventurers. If Lily ever tried to, no adventurers would ever allow me to participate in quests. Please understand, Master Bell, that this is the way things are. If rumors were to spread that I acted impudently, any adventurer besides maybe you would refuse to do business with me. I may be forcing an unfamiliar philosophy upon you, but would you please accept it as a favor to me, Master Bell? Throughout the entire time the Palum had been talking, her master had been completely silent, taking in everything the girl told him. Finally, after a moment of silence that had the girl fidgeting a little, Bell spoke up. I think I'll call you Lily. Ha! Come Sif, we've got more monsters to fight. Grabbing the claymore sword, he tossed it over to Sif and she caught it with her mouth, swinging it around and adjusting it until she had a proper hold on it. Drawing his straight sword, Bell walked away with Sif following close behind. Hey wait, did you hear a thing Lily just told you, Master Bell? Master Bell? Completely flabbergasted, Lily quickly gathered her things and followed after the two. And so, the party of three continued to slay more monsters as Lily tried to talk with Bell only for her master to completely ignore the Palum. While Sif was still displeased about coming back to the dungeon, the presence of her master calmed her down. Add in the flustered Palum with them, and there was a sense of humor amongst them. By the time the group returned to the surface, their bags were filled to the brim with magic stones. And much to the Palum's surprise again, instead of splitting the money 70 to 30, it was split 50 to 50 as her master once again left the Palum girl known as Lily flabbergasted. From then on, her master would continue to have the Palum girl accompany them during their dives into the dungeon and then later have her join them on the quests they take that took them outside the city. Of course, some complications would arise, but that is a story saved for later. Chapter 7, Grace 7, More Quests. You've already found yourself a supporter? Bell nods his helmeted head at his half-elf advisor, having told her about his partnership with Lily yesterday. I thought you were the only member of your familia. Did you get a new member? No, she's from a different familia, Bell explains. Her name is Lilaruka Arde from the Soma familia, and she helped me quite a bit yesterday. A supporter from a different familia. Should I have not accepted her aid? Bell asks, tilting his head. The half-elf couldn't help, but noticed that the knight made a habit of doing that a lot, mostly to express his confusion. No, it's completely fine, Ina said, waving her hands in front of her. It's just that, well, you said she was from Soma familia, right? Bell nodded. Yes, why? Is there something strange with Soma familia? I wouldn't say strange, Ina said as she opened a drawer and scrolled through its contents until she pulled out the information about Soma familia. The Soma familia is a typical case of dungeon explorers. Their levels are above average among major familias, being mostly filled with LV 2-in-1s, but they differ from the others. They're also involved in commerce. Commerce. They sell liquor, Ina explained. They don't sell much and their selection is small, but it's reputed to have exquisite flavor. Oh, Bell made a noise akin to interest. Was he interested in the liquor? She knew people his age were curious about alcohol, having seen many others drink it, but he really shouldn't be drinking at his age. Wow. More importantly, they have quite a large member base. I didn't know about this, Ina said as she read more about the Soma familia. So this Soma is highly worshipped? Bell asked and the half-elf nodded. It seems so, even though no one knows much about this god. Good or bad at all. Now Bell made a sound that Ina that he was suspicious of something. He then asked, what can you tell me about this god? Well, I heard he's famous for having no communication with the other gods. It said he's never shown up at a god's banquet. Even worse, they wonder if any other god actually knows him. And yet this god has so many people in his familia worshipping him, Bell pointed out. Yes, Ina said, starting to see why Bell was so suspicious. This god wasn't well known compared to others, yet he has so many in his familia. This contrast was quite extreme. There's nothing unique about the familia, but, Bell repeated, prompting Ina to continue. This is only my personal opinion, Ina said before explaining. Adventurers from the Soma familia have this strange air about them. They say they compete among themselves against their own comrades. Almost desperately. How can I put this? These familia members are for some reason desperate for something, and it's affecting them negatively. So you disapprove of me partnering with Lily? Bell asked. Well, not really, Ina said, surprising the armored adventurer. It's true the Soma familia is a bit mysterious, but you don't have to worry about conflicts between familias. No problems with Soma either. As long as you're careful enough to avoid irritating other members, it'll be okay. As I said yesterday, I want you to have someone at your side that isn't a... The half-elf glances down at Sif, who had been minding her own business while she and Bell spoke. Well, you know, for Bell's part, he simply nodded, understanding what Ina was saying. Anyway, the rest is up to you, Bell. You've made this decision on your own and thus you have to take responsibility, Ina said. Though, if I may ask, what do you think about this Lilaruka person? Well, she certainly isn't lacking in her skills as a supporter, and she seems like a good person. Although? Miss Ina. Instead of answering, Bell brought up another question. Are supporters scorned by adventurers? Ina blinked at the sudden question but answered nonetheless, smiling sadly. Yes, full-time supporters are deemed lower in status by full-fledged adventurers. I'm sure you know why without me telling you. The knight simply lowered his head, which told Ina all she needed to know. Not everyone can become infinitely strong, even with a blessing from a god. To be honest, such failed adventurers are likely to change to full-time supporters and become easy targets of contempt. Despicable. There was a faint red glow from under the slit of his helmet. While Ina didn't know if the feat was still her imagination or not, she knew that it was a clear sign that Bell was getting angry. Gulping, Ina tried to change the subject and lucky for her, she had one laying right on her desk. Bell? I've got a quest for you. The red glow under his helmet faded, much to the half-elf's relief as Bell looked back up at Ina, who picked up the paper detailing the quest. This came in a few days ago, Ina said, handing Bell a leftover quest. Leftover quests were, as the name implied, quests that had been left over. The guild received quests from people every few days and were showed up on the notice board alongside the news. However, the guild had the decision to display what kind of quests that got to be displayed. Should there be anything left that wasn't deemed important enough, the workers were told to either hold onto them or throw them away. The one Ina was handing Bell was one such request, one of many she had shown him this past week. The knight had requested that the half-elf show him any leftover quests that he could do after learning about their existence a few days back. The quest she gave Bell went as followed. A village quite a distance away from the city was currently suffering from monster attacks. destroying crops and injuring people. From the description given, the monster that was plaguing the village seemed to be goblins. The reward was mediocre, probably why this quest had been overlooked by other adventurers until it was taken down. But she knew Bell would not care about such a thing. Reading the quest out loud to himself and Sif, since the wolf couldn't read, something the half-elf took relief in as she was still wondering how the monster understood them, the knight discussed with Sif whether they should take the quest. After a while, the knight looked back up at the half-elf. After a week of seeing him go on quests, Ina guessed. Anything else? Yep, he was asking for more quests. Hold on. Holding up a finger, Ina went through another drawer where she kept any leftover quests and pulled out one that, after a bit of thinking, seemed good. Here we go. She handed the quest paper to Bell for him to read. It's a simple request from the Mayak Familia. It says they need a certain plant to brew potions, but I suggest meeting them to get more details. I see, was all Bell said as he read over the quest. Now I know I shouldn't be giving you personal requests from other Familia, but you're acquainted with Mayak and the quest isn't that difficult, Ina said. Bell had a good relationship with the god and his Familia as it was where Bell normally got his potions from. She didn't know why Bell had suddenly decided to get the ones the guild offers, but she didn't make a big deal out of it. Bell suddenly looked up at her and despite the helmet, Ina felt that the knight was staring at her confused. Then, as if remembering something, he said, "Why yeah, Mayak. Yeah, it's been a while since I've last spoken with him." Ina raised an eyebrow at the knight's strange behavior but decided not to call him out on it and went back to explaining. Whatever plants they need, the location is close to the village in the first quest so you can knock out 2 in one day. Bell hummed in acknowledgement at Ina's words before finally making a decision. I'll take it. Sorry, I'm shoving this onto you, even though you just got back to dungeon diving. Ina apologized. Don't be. I was the one who asked to see any leftover quests that you have, Bell said, rolling up the 2 quests given to him and putting them away before turning to leave with Sif following close behind. I'll see you later. Good luck, Ina quickly said, and the knight simply held up his left hand before clenching it into a fist. Strange gestures aside, the half-elf, while confident that he would return unharmed, wished for the knight's safety. Bell Cranel was strange. That is what Lily thought about her current employer as she walked through the market area to restock her supplies. She was running low on bolts for her ballista as well as a few smoke bombs and poison bags. Just because she was a supporter doesn't mean she didn't know how to at least fight back against monsters, even if her way didn't work on every monster. She was a supporter after all. She didn't know why she was even thinking about the armored adventurer. Sure, he was kind to her and albeit strange, but she didn't exactly feel safe around the man despite his strength. She had thought he was some gullible goody-two-shoes person. It certainly explained all the armor. She had approached the man in order to teach him a lesson, have reality slap him in the face as it did her. But the second they stepped into the dungeon, it was like he was a different man. What had once been a reserved, but talkative man had turned into a silent killing machine. As they made their way down to the 10th floor yesterday, he had mercilessly cut down any monsters that got in their way. Once they got to their destination, the speed and power he displayed were unreal to someone of her level. A first-class adventurer. Bell had to be a first-class adventurer. The abilities he displayed yesterday did not belong to a rookie. She probably should have guessed after he dislocated Ged's jaw when she ran into Bell the first time. But if Bell was a first-class adventurer, then why did no one know about him? With strength and armor like his, he should have been famous. But as she gathered information about him, people only knew about him due to the wolf he had by his side. Here you go. The store clerk hands her a bag of bolts which she took. After paying the man, she took her leave. Bell Cranel was strange and mysterious. He was an enigma. He was different from other adventurers, but an adventurer nonetheless. Just because he paid Lily 50% of yesterday's profit with her didn't mean she instantly trusted the armored man. She had to cut ties with him. That is what Lily decided. But on the other hand, that armored adventurer made really good money. Out of all the adventurers she's teamed up with, Bell made more than what a party of rookie adventurers could scrounge up. Of course, the magic stones they collected came from the 10th floor. But her point still stood that Lily was making more money than she's ever had before. If she stayed working with the armored adventurer, she should have enough money to finally leave her familia once and for all by the end of this year. But then again, staying by that man's side was not good for her safety. The man known as Bell Cranel hasn't done anything to her yet, but with how he acted in the dungeon plus the monster wolf he kept by his side, Lily didn't feel as safe as she should be. In short, the Palum girl was stuck in a bind. Should she cut ties with Bell, she would be safe. But if she stayed with him, she'd be free. Yes, it was quite a dilemma. Clack, clack, clack. Suddenly, she heard the familiar sound of clacking metal. It was hard to forget the sound as she had to listen to it constantly yesterday. Turning her head, she hoped it was just someone else walking around in full body armor, but such people were quite rare. Nevertheless, She prayed to whatever gods and goddesses were willing to listen. "Oh, is that you, Lily?" But it seems the gods were much too busy to hear her prayer as she saw Bell wave towards her. And of course, by his side was his faithful companion, Sif. Making sure her dog ears and tail were still on, she turned towards the man she had been thinking of. "Hello, Master Bell." Lily had the guts to at least greet him before turning to Sif. "And a good day to you too, Miss Sif," said Wolf, barely spared her a glance before it decided to look around the market area, finding the stores more interesting than her. She didn't know if she should feel relief or insulted. "What brings you to the market area?" Bell asks, his helmet hiding his expression. She had tried to get the man to take the helmet off so she could see what her employer looked like and maybe try to steal the helmet later, but he stubbornly denied her request every time she asked. "Lily is just restocking some of her supplies," Lily said, taking out a small bag simply called a poison bag. "What is that?" Bell asks, not recognizing the item in Lily's hands. In Lily's hands is a poison bag. Poison bag. As the name implies, its contents is filled with poisonous gas from a purple moth. The poison itself isn't deadly to most adventurers since the poison comes from such a weak monster, but it is effective to weak monsters, Lily explained. "I see," Bell said as he eyed the bag in Lily's hand with interest. She wasn't sure because of the helmet, but it felt like interest from the way he hummed. "If Lily may ask, what is Master Bell doing here?" Lily asked simply out of curiosity. "Same as you, I am here to restock on supplies," Bell said. "I see," Lily said as she glanced down at the pouches and throwing knives hanging by Bell's waist. "You sure do like to be prepared for anything, Master Bell." "Of course," Bell said in a tone like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "One can never be too careful." "Well, Lily wishes you'd dialed it down," Lily thought to herself. His belt of pouches was strapped on tight as well as his armor, making it hard for Lily to steal anything from this man. Not like she could though with how the man acted. Seriously, there was cautious and then there's just plain paranoid. But he did make a good point. "True," Lily responded back to the knight, placing the poison bag back into a small shopping bag she was using. "Well, Lily should leave you to your shopping. I'll see you at the dungeon, Master Bell." "Oh, I'm not going to the dungeon today." Just as Lily was about to leave, she froze at Bell's words. "Say what?" "Say what?" Lily repeated her thoughts out loud as she turned to look at the knight in surprise. "I'm not going to the dungeon today," Bell repeated to the Palum. "I'm doing a quest." "Huh? A quest?" He was doing a quest, but he wasn't going to the dungeon? How does that make any sense? Noticing the disguised Palum's confusion, Bell then said, "The quest I'm doing takes me out of the city. That's why I'm not going to the dungeon today." He was leaving the city? There were quests that actually let people do that. Why was she only hearing about this now? I see," Lily said, keeping her thoughts to herself. "Well then, I guess Lily here will have to seek employment elsewhere." "Sorry, I'm just now telling you this." The knight apologized and in response, she shook her head. "It's fine. Lily still has money left over from last time, so she's good even if I don't find work today," Lily said as she turned to leave. "Until next time, Master Bell. And maybe then, she can discuss the ending of their contract." Here's hoping he doesn't react the same as the last guy, though she had a feeling such a thing was highly unlikely. Then again, he was an adventurer. All adventurers were the same. "Lily, wait." The Palum did just that as she turned back to the knight. "Please don't feel bad for Lily, Master Bell. Moving from adventurer to adventurer is normal for a supporter like Lily. You don't have to cancel your quest just so you can help Lily out. Go and do your quest." Really, no matter what she did, this knight would not stop acting kind. She had told him the consequences of doing that to someone like her, but he would just not listen. Though, if she were being honest, Lily was quite envious of Bell right now. She had been born in the dungeon city and had lived here her whole life. Meanwhile, Bell got to go outside of the city, something she had wanted to do for so long but knew that if she tried to run, she wouldn't get very far, let alone survive. As much as she hated it, the city of adventures was the only life she knew. And after all she's done to survive, saving every Valis she could get so that she could finally leave her familia, leaving part way would seem anticlimactic, like all the abuse she had gone through would be meaningless. She wanted to run, be free, but only after she cut her ties with the Soma Familia. Actually, Lily was brought out of her thoughts by Bell, who then proceeded to speak to her something that would leave her shocked. "If you're having difficulty finding work, why not join Sif and I on our quest?" Lily's eyes widened at the proposition. He was asking her to accompany him on his quest. The quest that would take him outside the city, to the world beyond the walls of Orario. Lily needs to get her stuff first. And just like that, Lily accepted before she could stop herself. "Sure. Meet me at the West Gates by noon." "Okay." Lily, speaking in a voice filled with something she would later figure out as excitement, nodded her head before taking off. For the first time in her life filled with hardship, the Palum felt excited. The Blue Pharmacy. It was a simple name belonging to the rundown store that was the home of the Mayak familia. It had not always been like this in the past, but circumstances out of anyone's control has led to the Irish god's current lifestyle. Mayak, god and owner of the Blue Pharmacy, sighed to himself as he looked at his supply cabinet. He was starting to run low on ingredients used to make potions, the store's main source of income. It was a simple matter of going out to buy more and he had the money, but the business has not been going well as of late with few people coming in to buy the store's products. I wonder if anyone's accepted the quests Naza sent to the guild, Mayak thought, remembering that his one and only familia member had sent a few quests to the guild in hopes of getting anyone to come by and do a few requests for them. It's been a few weeks since then and no one's come by, either meaning no one was interested or the quests had gotten taken down. I wonder if I should ask Hestia's child for help? Mayak muttered out loud before shaking his head. Bell was a good kid, but he was still a rookie. He wasn't ready to take quests yet. Bam! The god jumped in surprise when the sound of the door being kicked open was heard. What soon followed was a loud, "I'm coming in. Fuha-ha-ha-ha. Great!" A bitter expression made its way to the god's face as he walked out from the back and came upon the last person/god he wanted to see right now. A middle-aged old man with graying hair and beard wearing white robes with intricate golden embroidery. Mayak immediately recognized the god as Dien. Dien's sect, god of healing, smiled at him mockingly. "Hey there, Mayak. Thought I'd just drop on by and see if you've got the money for this month." To the side, Mayak saw Naza send a glance his way and Mayak motioned for him to handle this. "I'm sorry, Dien, but I don't have this month's money," Mayak reluctantly admitted, keeping calm. "Oh-Ray-Ly?" In a mocking tone, the god of healing stretched out his sentence while smiling. "I could have sworn I told you to have it by the end of this week. I'm sorry, but I just don't have the money right now. Business has been slow lately." "Has it now?" "I couldn't tell." Again, the god continued to smile mockingly at him. As much Mayak wanted to shut him up, he refrained himself. Conflict between their familias would just end badly for him. "Well, since you don't have the money, I guess I can give some extra time. Another few weeks or so," Dien said before smiling wickedly. "However, if you can't gather the money until then I'll evict you of your store." "What?" The eyes of both Mayak and Naza widened in disbelief at the god before Mayak spoke in protest. "You can't do that." "Yes, I can. After all, who was it again that helped your poor familia member when you came begging on your knees?" At Diane's words did one of Mayak's eyes twitch while Naza visibly winced from behind the counter, rubbing her right arm. Mayak had to use every ounce of his willpower to not tackle the god in front of him for that low blow. "Well, I better be going. If I stay here any longer, I might just get sick from how run down this place is. See you later." And with that, Dien laughed as he left the shop. Following behind him was a familia member of his, Ermid-Tizenaire. The silver-haired doctor silently bowed to them before following after her god. How some as polite like her worked under Dien, Mayak would never know. "Well, that's just great," Naza said bitterly, laying her head down on the counter as she glared at the door. Mayak meanwhile simply sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He felt like one of these days he was going to deck that god right in the face, consequences be damned. "Any luck with anyone accepting our requests?" Mayak asked, turning to the brown-haired Chianthrope. "Nope," Naza said, tone still bitter. "They've probably been taken down by now." "It can't be helped if no one's interested," Mayak said. The quests they had posted requested adventurers to venture out of the city. But most adventurers today preferred to go to the dungeon instead, and there was more than one way to get potions in this city. "Well, I'm heading out to buy more ingredients and grocery. Mind the store until then." "Okay," Mayak said, placing a reassuring hand on the Chianthrope's shoulder before heading towards the door. These were tough times for sure, but they'll make it through this, somehow. Ring. Suddenly, the store bell rung as the door swung open. At first, Mayak thought Dien was back to make more useless banter, but to the god's surprise, it was a man in full body armor standing around the same height as Naza. The god was further surprised when accompanying the armored man was a wolf almost as big as Naza, who froze up at the sight of what was obviously a monster. Hello?" Mayak greeted the armored man, a bit nervous but tried to put on a brave face while he tried to unfreeze his familia member. "Hello?" the armored man greeted back in a polite, but also dispassionate tone. How he pulled that off, the god didn't know as the armored man looked around before asking, "Is this the Blue Pharmacy?" "Yes, this is the Blue Pharmacy," Mayak said while keeping an eye on the wolf by the armored man's side. As of right now, it was simply minding its own business, looking around the store. "I'm Mayak, the owner of this store. How can I help you?" The god asked, and in response, the armored man took out a rolled-up piece of paper. I'm here to do a quest. Mayak felt himself blink at that, and he felt nausea unfreeze at the man's words. Oh, Mayak shook himself out of his stupor and gathered back his nerves, trying to look professional with nausea trying to do the same. He then asked, how can we help you? In response, the armored man handed the quest paper to the god, and he unrolled it to see which quest the man was taking. He recognized it immediately. Ah, this one. It says to collect something called a blue mountain flower, but I do not know what it looks like, the knight explained. And so you came by to see if we had any to show, Mayak said. Figuring out why the knight was here though was slightly confused. Everyone should know what a blue mountain flower looked like. Nevertheless, turning to Naza, he asks, do we still have any? Here it is, Naza said, showing it to the knight. So this is a blue mountain flower, the knight said, looking down and getting a good look at the plant. The shape of it resembled a rose as the petals were, obviously, blue. Blue mountain flowers aren't that hard to find. They can be found almost anywhere, but they don't grow around here, Mayak said, speaking about the whole city area of Ororio as a whole. It's quite a bit away, but there's a forest where you can find them. I'd like it if you could bring back at least 10 flowers. I understand, the knight said, taking the quest paper back and rolling it up. I shall return with your requested items. And we'll have your reward when you return, Mayak said with an appreciated smile before quickly saying, thank you. The knight simply nodded as he turned and left the store, motioning for the wolf to follow as the door closed with a soft click. Well, at least we don't have to worry ingredients anymore, Mayak said to Naza with a smile. Of course, there was more that went into making potions, but he could get the rest later. Naza herself showed off a small smile before she made a face of confusion. He noticed this and asked, is something wrong? Well, turning back to the door the knight had just left through, the Chianthrope said, didn't that guy sound kind of like Bell? Blinking, Mayak thought about Naza's words while thinking back to his conversation with the armored adventurer, and true to the Chianthrope's words, the knight did sound like the blessed child of his friends, Hestia. Thinking about it now, he hasn't seen the boy in quite a while. Looking back to the door the knight just left through, the god thought to himself, that couldn't have been him. Could it? With a grunt, Bell got off the carriage, having finally arrived at his destination. Behind him, both Sif and Lily got off as well, stretching their limbs to shake off the sleep in them. The carriage drive had taken a good couple of hours. They had traveled quite far, Bell noticed. Depending on how things went, Bell estimated that he should be able to return to Ororio by late night should no problems occur. You okay? Bell asks the supporter who was taking much longer than Sif to get her limbs back in working order. Lily is fine, she just hasn't ridden in carriages often, is what she said as she finally finished her stretches and adjusted the giant backpack she was carrying. You seem to enjoy the trip here, Bell pointed out, remembering how the proclaimed Chianthrope was a bit starry-eyed as they rode in the carriage earlier. Well, can you blame Lily? This is the first time I've stepped out of the city, Lily said, blushing a little. Wait, this is the first time you've been out of Ororio? Bell asked, a bit surprised. Yes, Lily has lived in the city all her life. This is the first time she's seen the outside world, Lily said. That certainly explained why the supporter had been so excited when he offered her a chance to join his quest. She was excited at the chance to go outside the city walls. And, how was it? The outside world is a lot brighter than Lily imagined. Bell was just going to take that as she liked it. Nodding, Bell began to look around the village they had arrived at. It was a simple place, fairly large compared to most villages he's visited in the past week. He could spot a well not too far from his position. To the far east of the village was a forest, fairly dense from what he could see and close to the fields the villages uses to harvest plants and vegetables. Due to how close the harvest fields and forests were, he could see how the monsters got close enough to destroy the crops and injure anyone that was near, no doubt farmers. First off, got to talk to the chief of this village. Bell thought, already walking through the village and towards the biggest house here. Ah, Master Bell, wait for Lily. Bell heard Lily called out as he heard the supporter following close behind. But Bell did not stop until he arrived at his destination. It seems word of his arrival had spread as there was already someone waiting for him, an elderly man wielding a cane to support him. He wasn't at an age where he would fall over without the cane, but he was approaching close to that age. Are you the chief of this village? Bell asks in an almost dispassionate tone, getting straight to business. I am. Are you the adventurers sent from the guild? Yes. Wasting no time, Bell pulled out the quest paper and held it to the chief. Here is the proof. The elderly man scanned the request paper in his hands before nodding. He then looked at Bell and who he had with him. Is this all of you? Yes. Short and fast was Bell's reply, already seeing the doubt in the man's eyes, so he made sure to appear confident. That's what people wanted to see when taking a quest. Seemingly satisfied, the man gestures with his head to follow him, and Bell did so with Sif and Lily following close behind. Hey, is that the adventurer? Must be. Look at that armor he's wearing. Isn't it a bit dirty though? About time someone showed up. What's with that wolf he has following him? And how's that girl carrying such a big bag? Here's hoping he can take care of the monsters. Need to put food on the table, you know? Already, people from around the village were whispering amongst themselves. While he didn't exactly have super hearing, the villagers weren't exactly quiet in their whispering. Nevertheless, he ignored all the whispering and gestured Lily to do the same as the small girl looked a bit nervous. We sent out that request a week ago. I was beginning to think no one was going to come, the elderly man said, looking thankfully at the small group following him until he led them to the fields where men and women were already working on harvesting the crops. Are you preparing for a harvest festival? Bell asks, recognizing the signs based on what little memory he had left of his old self. Yes, we started around a few weeks back when one morning, we found all our crops ruined, the elderly chief explained. We had the guardsmen go out at night to investigate and discovered monsters, all goblins, eating all our crops. They chased them away, and the next day, they set out into the forest to go take care of the monsters. But they never came back, did they? Bell asks, and the man nodded. He thought as much. Since entering this town, there were very few guardsmen that were stationed around, telling Bell they were either understaffed, which was unlikely, or something had happened. Goblins were infamous for being the weakest monsters in the world, and no doubt, the ones found on the surface would be much weaker than the ones found in the dungeon. Even without a falna, a normal man should be able to take care of a measly goblin. And yet the quest had described that this village needed help against the goblins and wanted the source to be stomped out. That meant there is something else besides the goblins. This seems awfully suspicious, Lily whispered to him, no doubt coming to the same conclusion he did. Nevertheless, these people needed help and he would aid them. Turning to the forest, he saw it was neighboring a nearby mountain. To the left and right of it was nothing, but plains for miles and miles. After double-checking everything, he began to ask questions. How steep is that mountain? Huh. The village chief blinked at Bell in surprise before quickly answering. Why, you should be able to pass on horseback, so not that steep. Any caves? Bell's next question came in an instant, forcing the elderly man to respond quickly. Why yes, one of our woodsmen found one. We think that's where the goblins are housed at. Are there any other caves? I don't believe so. I see. Bell hums to himself as he crosses his arms. A cave. It's not the first time Bell's been in one, but he suspected there was going to be very little room for him to swing his sword around depending on how big the cave will be. He could still stab things with it, but having short swords, knives, or even a spear would be better for him as it gave him more options in attacks. Perhaps when he got back to Ororio he should buy more weapons for different situations. While he was more used to swords, he couldn't use it everywhere. Something to think about for later, Bell thought as he turned to Sif and Lily. Here's what we do. First, he turned to Sif. Sif, I need you to stay here. Immediately, the wolf sent him a look of disbelief before it turned into one of denial. Bell instantly had his explanation ready. I need you to guard the villagers should anything happen while I'm gone. Master Bell, you do realize you're having a monster defend people here, right? Lily said, pointing out the undead's absurd request. Then can you deal with a group of monsters alone should they appear while Sif and I are gone? Bell asked, and Lily instantly saw why Bell picked Sif and not her. Lily sees your point, the Chianthrope said before asking. But what should I do? You can either stay here with Sif or come along with me. I'm fine with whatever you choose, Bell said, and he spoke the truth. If Lily came with him, then he'll have someone to watch his back. If not, then that was fine too. After his experience in Lordran, he was quite used to fighting alone. Bell watched as Lily looked between himself and Sif, unsure of what to pick. After a while of going back and forth, she finally came to a decision. Lily thinks she'll come along with Master Bell. Bell nodded. All right then. Fair warning, you might have to leave behind your bag depending on how big the cave will be. Lily believes she will be fine. Her body is small after all, Lily said in a matter-of-fact tone. All right. Turning to his loyal canine friend, Bell gave the wolf specific instructions to watch over the village and its people in case of any monster attacks. Sif somehow managed to develop a sour look on her face, and in response, he gave the wolf a look that made the wolf relent. I know you don't like people very much, and I'm not asking you to get along. I just need you to protect them in case anything happens while we're gone. Can you do that for me? Reluctantly, the wolf gave a hesitant nod. Good. If it'll make you feel better, I can get you those barbecued ribs you like so much. At that did the wolf's ears perk up and her tail started to wag. It looks like the promise of food had gotten the wolf happier. Here's hoping my wallet survives. Bell thinks to himself as he turns to the village chief. We'll be heading out then. Where is the cave located? At the base of the mountain. Just cut straight through the forest and you'll find it there. You can't miss it. Got it. With a nod, Bell gave out a few more words before he departed. Come nightfall and neither Lily and I come back till then. Assume we are dead and request for more help later. With that, the undead drew the claymore sword on his back, stabbed it into the ground next to him, and left it there for Sif to use later as he and Lily headed into the woods. Master Bell, you could have said something more encouraging than what you said earlier. It's better not to get their hopes up, was the undead's response as he searched the ground while they walked. Eventually, he found what he was looking for. Footprints. All inhuman and tiny, no bigger than a child. No doubt these belonged to the monsters plaguing the village, which meant they were on the right track. Speaking no words, Bell motioned for the supporter to follow him as he led the way. After about a half an hour of walking, they finally found what they had been looking for. The cave. This must be it, Lily said. Bell didn't respond back as he drew his sword, held up his shield, and walked into the cave with the supporter following close behind. Igniting a flame in his hand, their surroundings were illuminated, allowing the two to see where they were going. The cave was big enough so Lily didn't have to leave behind her backpack, but there was barely enough room for Bell to swing his sword. He'll have to watch how he swings and stabs his weapon around. There were many times where he died due to his weapon getting caught in something. After the first few deaths, he learned his lesson. For the next hour, Bell simply walked at a calm pace with Lily following close behind, bringing up the rear as the flame in Bell's hand was their only source of light. In hindsight, maybe he should have brought a torch with him. That way, he could use it as a makeshift club if the wood was sturdy enough. He should keep that in mind the next time he went out on a quest. Ugh! Lily let out a noise of disgust as, after walking for more than an hour, they had come upon a dead body. The flesh of the corpse was shriveled up to the point where a few bones were seen sticking out, informing the undead that the body was about finished decomposing. Wounds that hadn't been tended to cover the body. From the looks of it, the man had been ambushed. His corpse was garbed in basic leather armor and armed with a round wooden shield and a spear. Judging by his armor, Lily thinks this is one of the missing village guards, Lily said, holding her nose as the corpse smelled of decay while trying to swat away some flies. Bell simply grunted in agreement. In contrast to the girl, Bell wasn't the least bothered by the smell as he inspected the corpse. After Blighttown, nothing was too smelly for him. There wasn't much on the corpse, barely anything really than what was shown, so Bell ended up taking nothing, but the spear which was still in good condition. In a place like this, it's better to use a spear, Bell thought to himself as he sheathed his sword and armed himself with his newly obtained spear. You're just going to take that? Lily asked, sending a questioning look at Bell as she stared at the spear in his hands. Sparing a glance at the dead body next to them, Bell gave out a cold reply. He won't be needing it. With that, Bell continued forward, missing Lily's body shiver as she followed after him, but with more distance between them than earlier. Bell had a feeling why Lily was further away from him, but he didn't let it bother him. Pillaging dead bodies had become second nature to him after his experience as an undead. He did it without thinking and with no hesitation, not bothered by disrespecting someone's body and more concerned about what he'll get from it. For the next hour, the two walked in silence, coming upon a few dead bodies along the way which Bell made sure to check to see if he could get anything from them. Most of them were armed the same way as the first corpse they found earlier with a few exceptions. From those exceptions, he acquired a hunting knife, a hand axe, and what he recognized as a light crossbow. It even came with a few bolts to use. As he took all these, he asked Lily to carry them as his hands were full. By doing so, while he had his back turned, he could feel the girl sending him looks of disgust. Again, he didn't let this bother him as he continued forward before stopping and extinguishing the flame in his pyromancy flame. Why? Because they had finally found what they had been looking for. Hiding behind a corner, both Bell and Lily peeked out to see the sight of 10 goblins, all sound asleep. Scattered around them were bones, no doubt the remains of what used to be the rest of the guardsmen. Peeking out further, the undead spotted another monster amongst the goblins. Like them, its skin was a green color, but the creature was bigger than the average man, reaching 2 meters as it was built like a bodybuilder, and resting at its side was a club that looked like it had been carved right out of a tree. A hobgoblin. Lily identified the monster, pointing over to it where in its mouth was a single piece of bone. Bell already figured what the bone came from. That's probably what killed all the guardsmen. So that's a hobgoblin. Bell thought, this being the first time he's seen one in person. He'll have to make note of this in his monster book later. No wonder none of the guards came back. Hobgoblins are found down in the middle floors. Even if this one is weaker than those in the dungeon, it still looks pretty strong, Lily whispered before asking the undead. Master Bell, what should we do? Kill it, of course. Were Bell's thoughts as he thought about what to do in this situation. He couldn't just blindly charge in there. That would only wake all the monsters up and he'd be swarmed. Even if they were weak monsters, Bell never underestimated a foe before him, always considering the chances of them killing him. He had been killed before by enemies he thought he could handle only to be proven wrong multiple times. What he had to do here was wipe all these monsters out in one fell swoop, or at least reduce their numbers, and his pyromancy would do the job nicely. But, Master Bell, what is that you're holding? Lily asked, having watched the armored adventurer pull out a round-like item. Bell's response was one word. Firebomb. Ha! Before Lily could process what Bell had just said, the knight summoned forth a flame from one of his fingers, lit a loose piece of string until it caught fire, and then threw it over at the sleeping hobgoblin. Boom frush. Gra-awa. Upon contact, the firebomb Bell had thrown struck the hobgoblin's face and exploded. The in-pain monster cried out, awakening the other monsters as it held its face to elevate the pain. But with most of its face and head blown off, the hobgoblin soon fell and died, crushing 2 goblins under its weight. Bell had expected more out of that. Perhaps we should use more black powder next time? Bell silently acknowledged the voice in his head, making a mental note for later before focusing back on reality. All the awakened goblins let out cries of alarm and confusion, searching left and right to find who had killed their leader. Taking advantage of their confusion, Bell stepped out from his hiding place, a great fireball already in his hands as he wasted no time throwing it, killing all 8 remaining goblins as the AoE consumed all of them before they knew what had hit them. Soon, the cave was filled with painful cries, intense heat, smoke, and embers, all of which did not bother Bell in the least. Asterisk cough cough cough. Asterisk. The same could not be said for Lily as the small girl teared up and started coughing when the smoke hit her eyes and entered her lungs. Realizing his blunder, Bell quickly produced a piece of cloth from one of his pouches and handed it to Lily, who looked at it in surprise. Cover your mouth and nose with this? Bell said as Lily hesitantly took the cloth from the undead and quickly wrapped it around so her nose and mouth were covered. Is it already over? Lily asked, still coughing a little, but not as much as before. Bell didn't respond back as he held up his spear and walked forward into the smoke den. What remained of the monsters were nothing but tiny piles of ashes. Not even a magic stone was left behind. Disregarding these, the undead stepped on and over the piles of ashes and searched the premises. Besides the ashes, all that was left were the bones of the guardsmen, ruined equipment that no doubt used to belong to the now dead guardsmen, and to the right was a pile of dung slightly charred. Ugh! Lily expressed her disgust when she laid her eyes on the dung pile. Couldn't the monsters have done their business in a separate place where it wouldn't pile up? Bell didn't respond back as he approached the dung pile and knelt down to it. Master Bell? What are you ugh? Again. Lily let out a cry of disgust when the undead unhesitantly dug his hand into the dung pile. Master Bell, what are you doing? Lily cried out in surprise and disgust, her face morphing to match the latter feeling. Again, Bell did not respond as he picked away at the dung pile, not in the least bothered at the smell and what he was doing. It wasn't the first time he's picked through shit. This was one of many habits Bell's formed during his experience as an undead. One was the kicking of doors, much like he had done constantly at the guild's door. To him, every door had a hidden trap behind it, though he's managed to rein in this habit as of late. The second habit he's formed is after he took care of any enemies attacking him, he would search the area constantly for anything, whether it be hidden items or secret passages. Thus the reason why he was literally going through shit. Finally, after picking through the pile of dung, he found something. Wiping away the literal shit covering it, in Bell's fingers was a black ring with a small red jewel in it. A ring, and one I've never seen before. Wonder what it does. Bell made a mental note to test out the ring later to see if it had any special effects. Most rings he found had special effects, though considering he already found a plethora of stuff to take back with him, maybe he should give the ring to Lily? With that idea in mind, he turned to the supporter and presented the dung-covered ring. Want it? Hell no. An instant reply came from the supporter, who backed away in disgust. That is disgusting, Master Bell. Shrugging, Bell pocketed the ring and stood up. If she didn't want the ring, then it was her loss. Even if the ring didn't have any effects, he could still sell it for some money later. Let's head back. Already ahead of you. Without waiting for the undead, Lily bolted out the den with the intent of getting out of here as fast as possible. In contrast, Bell followed after her at a calm pace. But wait, he should probably bring back proof to the village to show he had completed their quest. Putting his spear on his back where it just floated there, he grabbed what remained of the hobgoblin's club and carried it over his shoulder. Walking forward, he soon found Lily waiting for him, no doubt realizing that without him to provide light, she would get lost in these caves. Let's go. Hmm. And with that, after making it out of the cave and returning to the village, the quest came to an end. It was official, the adventurer known as Bell Cranel was strange. These were Lily's thoughts as she rode in the carriage that would take her back to Orario. Riding with her were both Sif and the adventurer she had been thinking about. Adventurers were all the same. They were selfish and greedy, something Lily has come to see time and time again under the constant abuse she received from time to time. After living in Orario for her entire life and being a supporter on top of that, Lily firmly believed this, so it made things a whole lot easier when she betrayed those that have treated her wrongfully. But Bell Cranel was different. She had thought, at first, that he was the same as any other adventurer she's met before, greedy and selfish. This feeling was backed up when he pillaged the bodies of the dead guardsmen. Lily knew she wasn't one to talk considering what she did to survive, but she at least made sure her victims stayed alive when she took from them. But right after he killed all the monsters with that strange fire magic of his, seriously, where was the chant? He offered her that piece of cloth to help her prevent inhaling any more smoke. And then she witnessed him stick his hands into that pile of shit. Literal shit. Who even does that? Sure, he found a nice-looking ring and all and even offered it to her. But there was no way she was going to take anything found in monster shit. Not even members of her own familia, crazy as they may be, were that desperate. Not to mention the reward for completing this quest. A measly 5,000 valis. Now, while that may sound like a lot of money to any normal person, an adventurer could make more than that by dungeon diving. She should know, she's worked with a number of them. In short, Bell Cranel wasn't like most adventurers. Was he greedy? She didn't know. Was he selfish? She didn't know that either. Really, the only thing Lily knew was that her employer was just weird. And a bit disgusting. Here, brought out of her musing, Lily looked up to see the armored adventurer handing her a bag that contained half of the reward. Laying on his lap, dozing off was Sif, resting her head down on her master. Looking at the money offered to her, for the first time in her life as a supporter, Lily was hesitant in taking the money. Lily barely did anything today. Really, all she did was follow the armored man and threw comments here and there. True, but think of this as compensation for carrying everything, Bell said, gesturing with his head to the weapons he took from the dead guardsman hanging on her backpack. Lily still couldn't believe the village chief let the knight take them. Well, except for the hunting knife. Apparently, the dead guardsman Bell had pillaged from had a family back in the village, and the knight had given it to the family when called out. Apparently, he wasn't as selfish as she first thought. With nothing to retort against Bell's words, Lily took the money from the knight and stuffed it away in her backpack. After doing that, Lily went back to doing what she had been doing since getting on the carriage, looking at the world around her. A few hours have passed and the sun was already disappearing over the horizon. In a few more hours, the night would fall. But until then, the orange glow of the sun cast a warm glow over the trees, the grass, and the flowers nearby. Even a city girl like Lily could appreciate the beauty around her as it left her in a bit of awe. At least she had something to look forward to when she finally cut ties with her familia. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Belle suddenly asked. It still surprised Lily just how different the knight was when he was or wasn't fighting. Lily doesn't answer back, unable to form one. Was she enjoying herself? She certainly wasn't having fun while in those caves with the knight. Just what was that thing he used earlier? He called it a firebomb? She'll have to question the armored adventurer later. Right now, there was another question on Lily's mind that she had to ask. Master Bell. Lily has a few questions she'd like to ask. I'm not stopping you from speaking. What is it you want to ask? Taking a moment to herself, Lily asks her first question. Why did you accept this quest? The knight tilts his helmeted head. What do you mean? Why did you accept this quest? Lily repeated before explaining further. The reward is quite small if you compare it to how much we make when dungeon diving. And you received even less because you split it with Lily. So why do this? The knight goes silent, probably pondering how to answer the Palam's question. After a moment of thinking the knight wasn't going to answer her, he spoke. I didn't do it for the reward. His answer surprised Lily as well as his next response. I did it because I wanted to help those people. You accepted this quest because you wanted to help those villagers? Lily asks and the knight nods. It isn't wrong to help people when they need it, is what he said to her. Lily couldn't help but think the knight was being cliché. Is that seriously the only reason? Lily asked. That isn't very adventurer-like. The knight's response was a simple shrug of his shoulders. Okay, next question. Why did you bring Lily along? Because I didn't want to leave you without work. The knight's reply was instant. Did I not explain this back in Orario? You did. But is that all? She asked. You just decided to bring me along out of pity? Maybe. For the first time, the knight sounded uncertain. It's just that you looked envious when I mentioned I was going outside of the city, which made me think you don't get out much. I never expected to learn that you've never ever left the city until today. Did she look envious earlier? Lily thought she hid her emotions quite well. Just how perceptive was this man? It was kind of creepy, a little. Master Bell, do you do these type of quests often? Lily asked her third question. From the way he spoke with the village chief, the Palum got the impression that this wasn't the first time the knight went out to aid a village in need of help. I've been doing it for a week now, was his reply. Should I feel like not dungeon diving, I go to the guild and see if they have any quests, ones that take me and Sif outside of the city. Of course, I plan on going to the dungeon tomorrow so you don't have to worry about not getting any work. Lily actually prefers if she stayed out here, the Palum thought to herself. After Bell had dealt with the monsters and they returned to the village, the people expressed their gratitude, which was immense. It surprised the Palum by how thankful they were to them. She wasn't used to getting such thanks before, but it was a lot better than the abuse she received from adventurers, that much she was sure of. Stop the cart. Bell suddenly spoke up, telling the coachman to stop the ride. The horses pulling the cart neighed as they came to a stop before the knight got off and walked into the nearby forest. Master Bell? Where are you going? Lily called out to the knight, but he was already gone, leaving the Palum girl all alone with the giant wolf who patiently sat. The coachman sent a look at Lily, who gave an expression that she didn't know what the knight was doing. Half an hour later, the knight finally returned from the woods, carrying a bag as his gloves were covered in a bit of dirt. Getting back on the carriage, he motioned the coachman to resume driving. With a whip of the reins, the horses resumed pulling the cart. Master Bell, what is that? Asked the Palum, pointing to the bag in the armored adventurer's hands. Opening up the bag, the knight pulled out what Lily recognized as a blue mountain flower. I had another quest which asked for 10 of these. I had almost forgotten after today's fight, the knight said, putting the flower back in the bag and relaxing again. A blue mountain flower? Weren't those ingredients for low-quality potions? Who the heck would ask for those? You took a quest which asked for 10 of those? Lily asked, considering they were still quite a way away from Orario. Yes, came an instant reply. Did he not know what those flowers were for? Surely he must know. You do know what those are for, right? Potions, correct? Yes, low-quality potions. So? Master Bell. Yes. You're weird. The knight's reply was to simply tilt his head before shrugging his shoulders. Really, what a strange adventurer. But, since he hasn't tried to use her as a meat shield, that already made him better than most adventurers. Tomorrow, Lily would be back in Orario and crawling through the dungeon with this strange adventurer. But as she basked in the warm glow of the setting sun with Bell's grimy armor reflecting some of the rays, a small part of the Palum felt that wasn't such a bad thing.